believe in God.
Every description of God that I've heard holds God to be all-powerful, very typical, and all good. And I see earthquakes and tornadoes and disease, childhood leukemia, and I see all of this and I say, I do not see evidence of both of those being true simultaneously. If there is a God, the God is either not all-powerful or not all good.
There is the man. I can think about 12 to 18 months ago, I hadn't even heard of Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he sort of just broke into the TikTok realm talking about science and atheism and all sorts of amazing stuff. So there he is kicking off this wonderful, wonderful episode. Looking forward to it. Welcome to the episode of I'm an Atheist. I'm not a believer and I'm not a pastor. Walk into a bar. I've thrown in a few extra words there just to confuse our listeners. I'm your host, Peter Rowe. Thanks for your company on this Wednesday night, the 27th of November, 2024, just gone 8 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time, broadcasting from beautiful downtown, warm Perth in Western Australia, live on YouTube. Tonight's subject to pull apart is, are we truly in control of our lives, or is everything we do predestined? In this episode, we delve into the age-old debate of free will versus determinism. Is life just a ride we're destined to experience, or do our choices really matter? We're going to explore the comfort some find in the belief that everything is mapped out. And we'll talk about the challenge of reconciling free will with faith. Does believing in a predetermined life make decision-making futile? Or is there more to the story? Join us as we unpack these questions and invite you to share your perspective. I, for one, certainly don't believe that life is mapped out for us. Again, I see no evidence to support this claim. To me, it's just another challenge for those that put all of their faith in God. But what does that mean? If you believe that God is in control of your life, I would ask, in what way? So that your life is good, that you can be successful, maybe profitable, healthy, wealthy, and wise. I think we just need to look around to see the conceptualization at work here. If that were true, there needs to be some explaining done, or maybe it's time to throw out the old maps and get some new ones, because my life would tell you that some of these old maps really suck. I want to know, what could be the purpose of predetermined existence, and how could anyone possibly explain the intricacies of how it would work? What does fatalism look like as it works? If you are a fatalist, jump on our comments section on YouTube and tell us why you choose to believe that your life is predetermined before you were even born, and how you can prove or show that your life is predictable. Yep, we are broadcasting live on YouTube right now for around about, I don't know, given on last week, probably a couple of hours the way we go, but maybe around about 45 minutes if you want to allow for that. And we would love to hear from you, like we did last week. Great comments, and plenty of them from some of the regulars like Fenton and some newbies as well, including someone from the Isle of Wight. Amazing. Thanks for joining us. Thankfully, I'm not alone. So let's see who we have on our select panel for tonight. We have Rich, we have Luke, and we have a man who is suitably dressed from being in the middle of the wilderness down near Albany in Western Australia. Jace, welcome, Gentry. How are we?
Good, mate.
Yeah, good, mate.
Here.
Doing well.
Good stuff. Good to have 3/4 of the team with us tonight. Suresh, I'm sure, champing at the bit to get back on air. Love hearing from him. He has a different perspective, obviously, because of his background, but he has gone through a few medical issues, to which they're going very well, but he's still just a little bit off the pace, I think, as far as coming back onto the podcast. But we hope we catch up with him very, very soon. So, gentlemen, what say you? Do we have any fatalists among us tonight? My guess is no.
Yeah, not even close. Not even close. But it is interesting because we talk about belief and faith and things like that. I think although I've never been that way, I have been in churches all the way along where at least there's a strong talk about that, about, as you said, God being in control. I haven't really been involved in like some of the hardcore Calvinist churches where they actually say that God is meticulously in control of every little thing that happens. But thankfully, I somehow managed to escape that. I actually put that down to just sort of engaging my brain slightly, and there you go. I'm being a bit cheeky, but yeah, I've never found that kind of view of life attractive.
There are, which people have hung on to, of course, various scriptures from the Psalms, and they've sort of taken what it says in there and applied it to their Christian life. Is worth mentioning that as far as all of the Christian groups in the world, the one that the three of us, Luke, Rich, and myself, have been associated with, definitely not a part of evangelical, sort of the Pentecostal Christian, if you like, not something that I was ever really taught about in my church days. But Jace, from a man who is unfettered as far as Christianity and the church goes, anything like that kind of discussion ever been in your life about predestination, or anyone you know that's a fatalist in the family that assumes that everything's meant to be and it will play out regardless?
Pete, I think I must actually be a Hindu when it comes down to it, because I'm starting to believe in reincarnation, because it can only be that I've done lots and lots of good deeds, that I've turned out so sexy, good looking, funny, and intelligent. That's the only way that I could actually be like this. Yes. My question, though, is that clearly I didn't do enough because he's rich and I'm not. So I ask questions about that. Ultimately, though, Pete, when it comes down to it, I will always ask this one question. If God is in control, and if God is meticulously in control, what on earth does that say about when I'm having special alone time?
Yeah. And a great question. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's, without casting too much into my imagination.
I'm embarrassed.
You're embarrassed. You should try sitting on where
he's watching, and he knows what sort of content I'm looking at when I'm having special alone time.
Right. Yeah. Well,
does that does that mean for me is that what it means? Guys, well, you can tell me. Guys, help.
You're only going to hell if you believe it. There is such a place. So yeah, look, I'd pack your bags is all I'd say.
Can I be serious for a moment, if I may?
It would be good if you could, thanks.
If it is even remotely possible.
Yes.
No, I don't believe anyone's in control. And you know what? I find it a far scarier idea that there is no God and that there is no one in control, and there is nothing greater than just us individuals all going about our own way in a very independent, so often selfish, and I guess libertarian kind of way at the end of it. If we're all just doing it without having had any training or education or any greater knowledge, and we're all just doing it the best we can, practicing love the best we can, practicing compassion and empathy the best we can, that's what some of us are doing. Unfortunately, there is a large cohort of our community, our society, who don't give a shit about any of that, and they're in it for themselves. And sometimes I wish there was somebody in control, that there was somebody watching over us, and that there was some kind of penalty for being an ass, because I think it would make life a lot better for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Strangely, and I think we're probably all guilty of it at some stage in our life, we have said something that we don't believe in based upon fatalism and predestination, all that kind of stuff. Predestinate, yeah. Is that we have all at some stage, I reckon, saying, "Oh, it's just, why did that happen? Oh, it's just meant to be. It's just a part of life. It's meant to be." That is exactly what we're talking about. We all say that, if not, certainly most people do say that on a regular basis. It's meant to be. We need to pull that apart. That in itself is suggesting And I'm sure a lot of people don't actually believe it when they say it. But the reality is you are saying something is going to happen in your life that is determined by somebody else outside of your being, i.e. a creator or a God or whatever you want to believe in.
Or karma.
It's just, you can't, it's just meant to be. And I want to challenge that and pull that apart tonight, because I think that's worthwhile. If you're listening tonight, please, if you believe in fatalism, if you believe that your life is mapped out, jump on and let us know, because we can come up with all of our ideas and concepts. We really want to talk to you. We want to hear what you have to say. So please don't wait to the end. Jump on as quickly as you can and have a yarn with us. Luke, obviously, I don't think that you would suggest in any way, shape or form that your whole life is predetermined. However, is there any scripture that you lean toward thinking, well, I don't know, maybe parts of it are?
No, there's not. But that's partly due to how I read the scriptures. I think you're in trouble if you're looking at the scriptures as you have to take every single scripture at face value, and they all carry equal weight, and they're all straight out of the mouth of God, because then what do you do with some of these ones? It's not how I read it. And so, no, don't think I'm bound by scripture in any of those. Although it is interesting to understand how some of these theologies come about. Predestination, that's a big one, like Rich mentioned with Calvinism, which essentially says that there's a bunch of people that God's picked, and there's a bunch of people that God's picked to not be picked, which is a really horrific theology when you think about it. And also, I think there's a lot of people that, and we've spoken about belief, obviously, many times in different ways. One of the things we've all come to and spoken about is that beliefs are these things that in many, many situations, we say one thing and we think we believe one thing, but we actually don't. And often when it's really tested in certain situations, that starts to unravel, and we have to kind of dig down and work out what it is that we really think and believe. But we just ascribe to something. I think fatalism is one of these ones where we just go, oh, God's in control. And you go, okay, well, if God's in control, that means you have zero say in how your life is going to pan out, which means that
Correct.
If you become very, very ill, if you don't call a doctor and you don't get help, well, if God's willing you to live and if it's all predetermined, then you're going to live. If you're going to die, then it doesn't, whether you call a doctor or not, then you're going to die, because your fate has been set. So in both of those outcomes, there is no point in calling a doctor. And yet everyone is going to call a doctor no matter what their belief is, except for maybe some extreme radicals. So we actually don't live out that sort of belief anyway. And it's actually, I think if it turned out to be true, it would be very, very sad. Very sad.
It's a bit pointless, really, doesn't it?
Well, it is. What are you? Where you're just robots going through the motions. There's actually no meaning to anything. And it goes beyond free will.
If we're not making choices, then how can there be judgment at the end?
Well, that's a really good point. Exactly right. Yeah, you're predetermined to be Hitler. You haven't. It doesn't matter what choices you make. That's it. And so that's just your. And who would decide that for someone, and for what purpose?
Am I right to assume here that all four of us are in violent agreement? Because if that's the case, good night, everyone. It's been great.
Good night, Australia. No, well, I knew that would be the case, and my hope is, of course, that we talk to people who also may be confused about the whole idea of predetermined existence and your life mapped out in front of you. One of the things I want to mention is that how the hell would you measure it, even if it were true? What could you possibly witness in your life that would go, you know what, I've seen some stuff. I'm actually leaning toward this fatalism thing. My lovely wife, Lou, has joined us tonight, which is a rarity, which is fabulous. What about the concept of nature versus nurture? There's an element of fatalism in that. Also, astrology, I agree with both of those. And just as a side, also, lovely Christmas tree, Luke.
Oh, thanks, Lou. Yeah.
Oh, just
check this
just
out.
before you say that though, Louise.
Oh, look at that.
Well, we need to find out whose structure it is. Did you have anything to do with it?
What, the tree?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I chopped it down before we. No, I didn't chop it down. We've had it. It's fake.
Liar.
But mate, oh yeah, it's a big thing in our house.
Yeah,
It
all the
is
kids,
literally a big thing.
all
in
the
your house.
kids chipped in.
They do, yeah. Well, you can see it's hardly decorated like a Myers tree, and because with the 4 kids, we worked out very quickly that all of the pop stick elements and things that come from school, it means far more to chuck those up there, and they get a lot of joy out of that. So there's stuff all through it, but we love it. It's good.
Give us
Who's
what's the
Neil?
contribution? Just as a quick look, can you notice
Oh,
what particular
Noel.
part that you're
Sorry.
responsible for hanging up?
Let me see.
You shouldn't have to be looked that hard, mate. Clearly.
Who gets to put
Did
the
this
angel
one?
on top? How do you determine that?
Hierarchy, mate. Patriarchy. That's
We used
me.
to do the same.
Big
Yeah.
dog.
The big dog.
You lift
Big
them up
dog
and-
star.
You lift them up and they put it on.
Yeah, actually, I do that. We just alternate each year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a whole bunch of fun. Hope they're not listening because we don't want to bag out, the whole, what. Anyway, so let's just go back to
Thank
Lou's
you, Lou.
comment for you guys to refer to the concept of nature versus nurture. That's a Danish word. Don't knock it. It's nurture. It's very good. For all of those people out there from Denmark, I do apologise for anyone
Let's
in
go to
Scandinavia.
Wikipedia.
I just insulted an entire nation. There's an element of fatalism in that. Also, astrology. Now, that's exactly right. People will laugh at, no, I don't believe in that whole thing. Well, then why do you believe in astrology? Astrology is exactly the belief that something is going to happen according to the stars that you have no control over, and it's either good or it's bad. And in
Who believes in
99%
astrology?
of cases, it's good because that's what people want to hear about themselves. They're going to meet the man of their dreams or the woman of their dreams. So, yeah, comments, please, Gentry.
That's
Leo.
such a scary thing to say.
Leo, today you may be on a podcast. All is well. What does that even mean when they do these? It's like the most open-ended statements that can apply to any of them. Sorry, I'm going to get. No, I'm not. I would normally get on my soapbox about astrology, but how can a galaxy a million light years away have any influence on our individual lives here on Earth?
Yeah, well, I mean, the irony about astrology, of course, is that it's all made up to fit in with the calendar. I mean, there was actually 13, from what I could remember off the top of my head, 13 star signs, but they changed it and narrowed it down to 12. So it's a lot more complex than that, but that's basically the nucleus of the ridiculousness of it, is that it actually doesn't work and doesn't fit into anything anyway. So
I think it's just people, we have things like the Enneagram and different types of personality tests and things like that now that identifies traits that are common across different sections of people.
Oh,
I think
that's such a Taurus thing to say, Luke.
Libra. I'm Libra, actually. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah, no. But I mean, all I can understand with astrology is that in ancient times they've grouped personality traits and they've said, oh, it must come from here, and there'll be some background to it. But this, I think, it lingers because we eat that stuff up. We love to have we love to have. Yeah, it's like I'm hot-headed and I don't know why. Oh, it's because you're a Scorpio. Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, it's like it gives a reason for some of these things, and I don't think there's anything behind it. But obviously, that's what lingers. But the nature versus nurture thing is very, very interesting. I think Lou's spot on. There is an element of fatalism in it. Certainly, there's causality, in terms of the nature. The nurture aspect of something. If we know that under certain environments, certain situations, the child has very little choice as to what they're going to be faced with at the end. But I think the difference is they're not stuck in that. They're shaped. We are certainly shaped in things, although that's not the difference comes from something outside of us hasn't predetermined that. Sure, the environment has, our parents have in that sense, but that wasn't our fate, so to speak. And yeah, it is very, very interesting. It's deterministic, but
Mm.
I don't think it's
I mean,
fatalism.
I've seen it twice now, and in an extreme kind of way. So, me and my brother brought up in the same house with the same parents, everything the same, fed the same food, initially gone to the same school, all of this kind of thing. And yet we are about as different as you could possibly be. I won't go into the details about how, but we are very, very different. We would even vote in very, very different ways.
Mm.
I've also now got 4 adult children, and every single one of those brought up in the same house by the same parents with the same values and morals and beliefs and politics every step of the way. They all went to the same school, and yet they are all so different, you would believe that they come from different families. And it blows my mind, because when people talk about nature versus nurture, these kids have got the same genetics. Like, you couldn't have made a more perfect cloned environment than what we've given them. But the difference is just incredible. And that's my phone. I shall go and get that.
Okay. It's also very, I mean, for a lot of people, it's very comforting, isn't it? Knowing that I don't have to, and this fits in perfectly with the whole belief in God in the first instance, that I'm being taken care of. That's a great feeling. I'm being looked after. The King of the universe, the Lord of the universe is looking after me. I'm one of his loved and selected individuals, and how wonderful it is. And he's got my best intentions at heart. So how good is life going to be? The reality is, of course, that that's not how it plays out, and there's no way of measuring that and whether it's actually true or real. I did want to just quickly mention, while we're talking about astrology, guys, and this is off the cuff. It's nothing too important, other than just to mention that Jesus was a Capricorn, and so am I. So, do what you will with that.
You're not claiming to be the Messiah, but
No.
you got the same kind of stuff going on, do you?
Well, I'm
It's
getting
hard,
there.
hard to say otherwise.
I've got the naughty boy bit down. That's too easy. I perfected that shit. I just haven't got the other stuff. So, yeah,
You've got to start somewhere.
25th of December. What a date.
Yeah, with the nurture versus nature kind of stuff, it really is speaking about, for me, the idea of free will. And we talked about politics, but there seems to be like a strand of a way of viewing society and behavior and things like that. It was just like, well, it's their choice. They've chosen that lifestyle, and it's like, well, no one's actually that free just to sit down, posit something for them, and then get what they want. We don't have a bunch of empty vessels sitting around and they get to choose their life. Much of it's chosen for them. Genetics and the sort of we're embodied beings. Stuff going on with the body has a huge effect on behavior and outlook and thinking and all of that kind of stuff. And it seems almost chaotic. Like, as you were saying, Jace, 4 kids, same environment, same sort of genetic pool, and such vastly different outcomes. It seems like just a slight difference in something, maybe a way of reacting to a certain thing early on can set them on vastly different tracks of thinking and viewing things, which is not surprising because, chaos theory, etc., very small things in the physical realm, we see that play out, and how much more in a vastly more complex system of human behavior and outcomes. So nature versus nurture, certainly, it's funny because it pulls it back towards away from free will, in a sense of people saying that you're just absolutely free. None of us are absolutely free in that sense, but it doesn't really push it towards fatalism as such, because it's more chaotic and probably a very incredibly complex system.
So Gestaltism, where they say, you are more than just the sum of your parts, but it is those parts that are the critical foundations of who you are, but you are more than that.
Yeah.
And your behavior doesn't have to depend on who you were or your history. You can make decisions beyond that. But to a large extent, your behavioral tendencies will be influenced by your past and your knowledge, your memories, what you've been influenced by. Absolutely. Your values. And that is something we are now seeing writ large in the United States.
I think it would be more. I think it would be more bizarre if all your kids were alike, considering that they're a meld of two people.
Well, I'll give you one thing that they
and it's
do
not a
have in
50%. If not,
They
it's not
do have-
50-50.
Well, you're right. It's not. They look different. I mean, well, they all look like they're part of the same family, but they do look different enough that you could draw an analogy to their behavior and their intelligence and their knowledge as well. I mean, it's a difference. I think one of the things that I find most interesting about them is that they do share common family values. They do share a common morality, and they do share the same political leanings that me and the wife have got. So there are some stuff there which we have been able to instill into them, which is of genuine value. But it's just the way that they individually react to things that I find most interesting, because I would have expected some sort of commonality, some sort of thread that binds them all with the way that they would respond to things. But no, some of them think that an offense is the best defense. So if you go to tell someone off for doing something, bang, you get attacked. And some of the other ones will be very laissez-faire about it and just take it all in. I don't know. I can't explain that. I don't know whether I attribute any kind of fatalism to it, though, Pete. I just find it fascinating. And I think it's like humans in general. We are the products of our environments as well as our genetics.
I think it's very healthy that you have children that are so diametrically opposed on some issues. It means that the basics of respect and love and care and all of those things, as long as they're there and you're achieving that, that's the bee's knees when it comes to being a parent. For me, I think everything else that happens out of that, whether you're a scientist or whether you're a street cleaner or whatever, those things are irrelevant. Your contribution to humanity as a loving, caring human being with respect for other people, that is the one thing that we made sure that we've instilled in our kids. They are the first to drop everything and help someone in need, and that to me is the backbone. If you can get your children emulating that's everything to us, and we've achieved that. I mean, no one followed in my footsteps of being a radio broadcaster. No one's followed in Louise's footsteps. It's not necessarily a done thing. My children are doing what it is that they do, and they're very good at it, and they love it. And it's nothing to do with what we've done. That's fine. Absolutely fine. And I want to get to the free will thing, though, because that's a huge part of Christianity in their the formulative structure that I have free will. I don't see how you can possibly marry free will with fatalism. I can't see how that works. To me, it's a contradiction. If you have free will, then you don't use that free will. If you're a fatalist, you believe that God's already mapped out your life for you. How does free will play a part in that?
I'll just launch into something small. Free will, there's a couple of definitions of it. I think one of the most popular one that everybody sort of gets on board with nowadays is this idea of I think it's called a libertarian free will. Basically, it's the free will is the ability to choose between alternative things, A or not, or B, or A or not A. So you have choices to make all the way through. And I agree with you. If there is some kind of meticulously governing mind called God setting up everything, in fact, some of the most sort of hardcore theologians in that space say, one of them, I think it was Jonathan Edwards, one of the hardcore fatalists or determinists in evangelical Christianity. He said, even the way that a mote of dust will float in the sunbeam was determined by God, let alone every other thing. So every piece of the universe is governed. And in that sense, you're right. Free will, the ability to choose, becomes meaningless. You'll hear them, wax eloquent about the idea of almost like a second order free will, that they redefine free will just to, you do what you want to do, and then God makes you want things, so you end up doing what you want anyway. That's free. But that's no more free than if,
Brainwashing.
the way I got my wife was, to love me, I created a little chip and implanted it in her brain. And this chip I could control, not her behavior, but all her desires and impulses. So she was freely choosing what she wanted to do, but I was the one controlling the wants. We know that's not free in any sense of the word. And that kind of double speak and stuff just literally devolves into gibberish. You redefine terms to mean the exact opposite of what they actually do mean.
Is that derived from the scripture about God knows every hair on your head? So that insinuates that there's nothing about you that he doesn't know of, including what you're going to do.
He formed you in your mother's womb and things like that. Yeah, there's many scriptures. Yeah.
What I think it actually stems from is, there's this idea that the most important thing about God is not that he is love or anything else. It's he is sovereign, which means he's large and in charge, and that's the most important thing. And then everything else hangs off of that, and you end up with a view of God that basically, I think, they're actually devil worshippers and just got the names mixed up in the Bible, because every image they talk about this kind of God, a God that is in control of every little piece, is a God who's caused untold horrors on this earth. That is the evidence. And that kind of God you worship maybe because you fear him and you don't want to go to hell, but you don't worship him because you love him. And in my opinion, I reckon you're devil worship. You've just got the names mixed up.
And because that causes all sorts of issues, right? Because you're left with that. If God is controlling the way dust falls down, because the most important thing has to be that he is in control, that he is all powerful, that he is sovereign. That's good if things are going good for you. And so when things aren't going good for you, you're faced with a decision. Either you've got this idea of how God operates wrong, or you need to make sense of why this is happening, let alone why some 3-year-old has just passed away from leukemia.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like when we're talking on that level of stuff. And this is where some very, very distorted, twisted theology can start to come up around you had sin in your life, or he's doing that for the greater good and we just don't understand it. I'm sorry, the greater good, really? Yeah. All of these sort of things. And you just go, the reason that you're having to backflip and come up with these distorted ideas of God inflicting this sort of suffering is because you're unwilling to let go of this idea that God is totally in control of everything.
Yeah.
And I get it, because maybe you don't have something to replace it with, or you've never wrestled with the idea of what God would look like if he wasn't controlling every little bit. But this is the ironic thing, is we talk about, well, yeah, God is love, yet he's also fully in control and he will determine whatever it is that we're going to do. Well,
love is control.
That's not love. Love is not controlling. Love is not coercive. Love is not imposing my will, even if my will is the best thing for you. That's not love, you know. And so there's all sorts of contradictions there, and we end up in all sorts of pain. I mean, because that's
your body, my choice.
Exactly.
Can I just say now? as an avowed atheist, I do have one particular thing that I struggle with. Now, I like to think I know my physics. I like to think that I know my quantum mechanics, and I've got an avowed interest in all of this kind of stuff. But there's an American philosopher by the name of Alex Rosenberg, and he talks about an extrapolation of this physical determinism that we're talking about now on the macroscopic scale by looking at like a set of dominoes. Now, a domino's movement is determined completely by the laws of physics, right? Now, everything is determined by the laws of physics. Now, if the behavior of a set of dominoes can be compared to the neural activity in the brain, which is just a complex physical object whose states are as much governed by physical law as any other physical object, then what goes on in our heads is as fixed and determined by prior events as what goes on when one domino topples over another one. It's just chemistry. So if we've just got these electronic reactions and chemical reactions going on in our brain, they're all governed by the laws of physics. So at what point is that free will? Like, I know we're now starting to talk about very complex systems, and again, chaos theory and how one tiny thing can set off a pattern that goes in one direction or another. And there's so much complexity and chaos going on in the world, we don't know what affects one thing to another or how much it affects it, or, you know, these waves of complexity. And it's certainly what they talk about in the quantum world, is how things can happen that are indeterminate, you know, in quantum states where two things happen simultaneously and so on. The struggle for someone like me who doesn't believe in any of the spiritual aspects or the faith aspects or the fact that I should be relying on anything other than the black and white of physics is, how do I then go to explain the concept of free will when, if I was practicing the internal consistency that I like to with all of my thoughts, I can't possibly believe that. How can I hold this to be true, free will, and hold this to be true, chemistry and electrical activity? They can't both possibly be true unless there is a deeper fundamental misunderstanding that I have with all of this stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree that, you know, that is something I wrestle with quite a bit. I think I've got a slight benefit to you is in the sense that I've got more to play with than the physical realm, but not much more, because I'm still quite I still think rational thought and science and everything is the way to go. You're right though. If the laws of physics were as we pretty much know it, it's a struggle to see how free will and choice and all those things come in, because it'll be just a extension of a deterministic system. There's a couple of things that might, because we don't know all the laws of physics, because literally we don't have a grand theory of everything, so we don't know it all. So there's still an out for that kind of stuff, but it's in the realm of mystery. It's like, we don't know if there's such a thing as free will. Hopefully it sits in that gap that we just don't know. People do talk about quantum indeterminacy, because that is, like, in the macro level, it's very physical forces. It's just force, and we can determine. The quantum level, there's indeterminacy. That doesn't, in my opinion, give us free will.
Thank you,
Heisenberg. Free will is not just, if free will was just a random act, free will, my choice would be no different than an earthquake or an aneurysm. It would be just a brute event that just happens. That's not free will. Yeah. So quantum indeterminacy doesn't quite give me enough there. I think the big problem is free will might not be the way that I think deeply about it. I try to frame it this way. It's not just about being able to choose A or B. It's really about having an ability to see into the future, imagine an end, and then move toward that end. The sort of I was going to say a rude word, but the posh word for it is teleology, or telos, an end point, a meaning, and then move towards it. Such as, I don't just happen to find myself at the shops because my brain fired in a certain sequence. I actually sat here and went, I like chocolate. I want some peanut M&Ms. I'm going to go to the shop. That's how I find myself at the shop. So either in that choice about the brain working, we've got, for me, I think there's only two choices for what we know is there's something more than the physical processes going on, because there seems to be the ability for your brain to do something that is over and more than the physical processes seems to be there, or like a lot of physicists would say, that sense of agency is literally an illusion. It's
Does that
something.
apply to animals too?
Yeah, I think so.
And even animals without consciousness, like insects and stuff that just react to things. Is there still?
I think it's
free
much
will?
much less. Yeah, I think there's a correlation between what we call free will and this whole thing that we get all angsty over is what we call consciousness. So the less markers of consciousness, I think I see a lot more determinism in that sense. I think you put your finger on the button there is a really naive view of a physical only universe will end up you having to say there's no such thing as conscious thought, there's no such thing as free will, it's an illusion, we're in a purely deterministic universe. A more sophisticated thing, which most physicists are at, and they're like, well, we don't even understand all the laws of physics, how can we make such a thing? It seems to me obvious that we have free will. Obvious. If it's an illusion, then science is a joke, because science depends on being able to be faced with two choices, make a rational choice and say that's true. I'll say this one last thing before I hand it over. If absolute determinism is true, you'd be absolutely wrong for believing in it, because rational thought wouldn't work in an absolutely deterministic universe, because there's no way for me to have two propositions determine which one is true and follow it if it's a deterministic universe. Really, that blows my mind. If it's true, I'd be actually wrong for believing in it.
If you just on that, if you guys get it, I'll try and find it before we go tonight, so I can actually share with you along these lines, which is just an incredible discussion with Neil deGrasse Tyson and two other incredibly amazing people breaking down what we're talking about to the point where they now have got studies where every decision we actually make to do something, we've already made it subconsciously before we make it. And it was all about free will. It was fascinating. I won't go too far into it because I won't credit it enough, because I can't remember the names of the people and what they're actually discussing. Needless to say, they just left me in a pile of dust trying to catch up to what the hell they were doing. These are the elite of intelligent science people. And
I think I've seen that study.
Oh my
it's got
God,
to do with something like measuring spikes of activity.
Yes.
And the actual conscious decision to do something. And it seems like in some ways of understanding that study, that the impulse comes before I'm actually aware that I've chosen it. And it's like, that, if nothing else, that means free will is not as simple as
correct.
And even Jung talked about how we have ego, super ego, and id, the different levels of our consciousness and which ones are responsible for what, and how often we rationalize what we've done after the event and justify it.
Yeah.
To me, it's almost absurd hypothesizing about stuff like this, because we none of us are that able and that capable of understanding the kind of quantum level that they're talking about. It was three guys. It was deGrasse and two other guys and a woman who is I couldn't even understand the title of what it was that she was doing. It was just way beyond.
Brilliant, man.
Oh, look, I'll track it down and find it out, because it was just the most riveting. I understood once they talked about breaking stuff down into levels of being able to try and understand what it is that the brain is actually doing prior to what it's actually going to do. And I don't know how they did it. It's just like blood tests and all sorts of waves from the brain. It's insane. It was just, anyway, I'll try and track it down. But just a reminder too, if you are listening tonight and you want to get involved. Last week was a bit like this with Luke and I. It was very quiet for a little while, and then it just went crazy. Tonight's a little bit quiet as well. So if you want to be involved, you want to talk about fatalism, do you view your life as being somehow controlled by an exterior force other than your own consciousness? Do you sense that your life has been mapped out for you and you're just going through the motions and everything else has been taken care of? Because that's a fascinating subject, and would love to hear from you. If you want to be involved, jump on the YouTube, which is where you're watching us live. You'll see the comment section and chuck something in that we can talk about. That we can pull apart. Yeah, mate, go for it.
We talk about free will. How often is it that someone who is addicted to heroin wants to stop taking heroin, desperately wants to stop taking heroin? That's their free will. Their free will is, I want to stop taking heroin. But their addiction compels them to keep on doing it. What's the difference?
It's hard to exercise free will in that instance, isn't it? It's almost impossible for an addiction. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and it's one that I've been thinking of as we've been talking as well, because, and it was sparked by something Rich mentioned earlier around that impulse from someone that we see on the far right, and certainly in Christian spaces where this idea of ultimate free will and ultimate personal responsibility linked up with that, where you see. It's almost there's a lack of compassion or a lack of empathy for people such as addicts is a really good example. Homeless, those who are who found themselves in situations where, and it's easy when you have that point of view to go, well, they have the same opportunities that I do. They could get a job if they wanted to. They could get therapy if they wanted to. They could stop this sort of stuff, and it takes any responsibility of looking at systemic issues that may have led to that, environmental problems, looking at anything that we could be trying to work to change, advocate for, that sort of stuff. And certainly it starts to erase, like I said earlier, empathy and compassion, because we're not seeing someone who may have made poor decisions, but they've made those poor decisions because they've been shaped or they've been raised in a community that has faced hardship, or they have a certain skin color, or they're a certain sexual orientation, or any sort of things that whoever is in that position has not had to deal with. And all of a sudden it becomes all about that person's personal responsibility to just pick themselves up by their bootstraps and sort themselves out, rather than partnering with them to try and bring change, or trying to bring systemic change and all that sort of stuff. It's almost like that's that far free will side, but then also on the other extreme, that fatalism side, where it's just, it doesn't matter, God's going to do what God's going to do. It leads to that same lack of empathy. That's because it goes, well, if they're going to be all good, they're going to be all good. If they're not, they're not. I've got nothing to do with it. Anything I do can't change. I can't change the system. I can't change them. There's nothing I can do or say is really going to make any difference because it's all predetermined. So you've got the two ends, and both of them are leading to a distinct lack of I guess, imagination to change and to partner.
People don't understand the consequences of their own actions. That's the big thing. Have you ever had that discussion with people about the difference between equality and equity, and found that people don't understand the difference?
Totally don't get it.
We have a councillor down here in the Albany region who has released a video online talking about how he's upset that the other side of politics wants him to treat different people differently. And he thinks that all Australians should be treated the same. We should all be equal. We should all be treated with equality. And I thought, you know what? That is something that a white, middle-class, educated male is likely to say. Because, you've never experienced discrimination or any kind of persecution in your life. You want everybody to be equal, but you don't understand that other people haven't had the opportunities that you've had. And so when we talk equality, equality is not about making people, giving them all the same options to achieve the same outcome. It's about equity, which is giving people what they need to achieve the same outcome. Now, how does all of this tie into what we're talking about right now? This is about us as individuals looking around us and making judgments about the environment around us and who those people are and the opportunities they've had, and whether or not we think they are exercising the correct decisions based on our values and our morals.
Spot on.
But it's never going to be the same, because they've grown up in a different world and they've got a different sexuality or a different set of politics, or they've got relations that they've had different experiences with. They may have been abused earlier on in their life. It's very hard for us to be able to put ourselves in the position of other people. And so it all comes back to the same thing that we have basically tied off every single one of these podcasts with. We've got to care about each other a bit more, have a little bit more empathy and a little bit more love around the place. And if we had that, a lot of these discussions, whilst they're really interesting and deeply philosophical, a lot of them actually go away because it doesn't really matter.
100%. 100%.
And I think the what you're saying is spot on, Jason. I think that a lot of the problem is that we've also shared, of course, in these podcasts. And the one thing that I fervently have against faith-based debates and discussions and the whole Christianity thing and the exclusivity that is Christianity, that my God is the only God. You know, if you want to be this, you have to be, this is the God, and there's only one God, and it's the Christian God, the God of the Bible, and everyone else is wrong. That is forever going to continue on a circular debate and argument. I don't ever see a point where we get to the point where you go, you know what, this is just crazy. I can have my belief. I can believe in a creator, or I can believe in a God. I have no evidence, no proof of the existence of that. For all intents and purposes, it is in my head. It's in my imagination. It's in my brain. It doesn't exist outside of my head. It can't be proven outside of my head. I'm the only one that can claim that I know God. I can't show you. I can't demonstrate that. And this is the argument that we always kind of get into. I think that what you're talking about is just simply a freedom to express yourself in a way that encourages love and companionship and all of the nice things that we want to have as human beings. And I think the very second you take that and package it up as a organized religion, I think that's when it says this is as far as we can go. We can't create what it is that you want, because the Christian claim is the only way you can get that is by believing in God. And that's a stalemate. It can't go past that. And it's impossible, I believe. It's as impossible as trying to understand whether we have free will by simply saying these are the parameters you must operate within to understand love and God and why you're here on this earth. I think it's far more important to learn humility, grace, and presence and love and understanding and helping. And you don't need any of that stuff. It's not a prerequisite to know that stuff in order to be a loving human being. I grew up in the Pentecostal church believing that you could not do a good thing unless it was in God's name. Forget about the old lady down the street who helps the next door neighbor. She's not recognized in God's mind. She's a sinner. You have to be doing it for God and God only in order for you to be a good person. God knows how many people that bullshit poisoned over such a long period of time. It's just so not true.
And it leads to tribalism.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's a pure tribalism, because all of a sudden to do God's will means to help God's children. And if your definition of God's children are those that are sitting in the pews next to you, or those that believe the same thing you do, or worship the same God that you do, it becomes a pretty small thing, and it becomes about in and out and us and them. And the idea of us and them is the very idea that from the dawn of time has haunted humanity and leads to war and violence and scapegoating and all manner of conflict and issues. It is the age-old issue, us and them. And so for me, anything that starts to break down those barriers needs to be something that's done. And anything that puts them up, whether it's religion or even someone's idea of Christianity, it's wrong.
So the first thing we do is get rid of sporting teams.
No, that's fun.
Oh,
Let's not go that
This is
far.
what-
Right?
This is
Baby
why it's
steps.
so important. This is why it's so important to have Jason on this debate, because he wants to achieve what we all want to achieve, but he knows that that doesn't lie within a religion, a church, a group, anything that you guys are talking about. That's he's already there. So the question is, why do I need to be a part of your group, as it were, to worship a God when my heart already knows what it is that I need to know? So he's the odd one out, obviously, in this
Before we
group,
go
because
there,
you are currently in it. I was in it, and he's never been in it. So
Can I bring up one thing that I was going to bring up last week had I been able to connect through? And this is possibly even going to upset me a little bit. So 2 weeks ago, just over 3 weeks ago, I found out I'm going to die. And I'm not joking. So I found out 3 weeks ago. So I have regular MRIs because I have multiple sclerosis.
yeah.
So these are very long MRIs. I'm in the tube for over 90 minutes as I get the full scan of my brain and my spine done. After this particular MRI, the results came back and they were sent directly to me, which is actually quite unusual. And the radiologist diagnosed a disease called myelomalacia, which I'd never heard of before. We did a bit of investigating into what myelomalacia is. And as opposed to MS, which is a disease where you die with it, not from it, myelomalacia is a disease that you die from, not with. Generally, from diagnosis, it's less than 10 years until death. We were unable to determine how long I've had the myelomalacia for because I've been on some medicines for quite some time which disguise the symptoms of it because they're from my MS. So I spent a week and a half under the impression that I probably had between 1 and 3 years remaining. Now, even as an atheist, perhaps even more so as an atheist, when you're threatened with imminent death, things start coming into perspective and things change. And I was somewhat surprised to discover that my fear about death was not for me. It was actually for my wife and kids and my friends. And even that, to a certain extent, is a little bit selfish because I was a bit worried about how they would react when I'm gone. And the bottom line is, whilst they'll be sad, it makes no huge difference because I have a life insurance policy. They'll be doing quite well out of it. Everybody will be happy. But I didn't want to think that my consciousness wouldn't be around anymore to enjoy everything that's going on. And so I really started reassessing a lot of things in terms of what am I spending my time doing? What am I thinking about? Who am I helping? Who am I hindering? What am I doing with the time that I've got left? Anyway, fortunately, I was able to get in contact with my neurologist who's been looking after me for 30 years. And he said to me, Jace, if you didn't have MS and this radiologist looked at this MRI, he would have been absolutely right. It is myelomalacia, and yes, you would have a very short expectation on life. But because I've been looking after you for 30 years and I've got MRIs over the last 30 years, I can see that this is just a gradual degenerative condition. With your MS, you're just going to continue to get worse because it is degenerative, but you're not going to die imminently. And the worst thing about this was that because this whole situation had inflated like a balloon and my emotions were there and the kids' emotions were there and my wife and so on, when he stuck the needle in that balloon, instead of it all just reducing back down again, it was devastating because everything had changed in terms of the things that you say, the values that you have, the plans that you've got. You start making decisions that would have seemed very short term when you should be planning for the medium and long term. But it also helped me perceive other people in a different light because it made me realize how shallow we can all be on a day-to-day basis and that we don't focus on the important stuff.
Yep.
That was very clear in the way that I was living my life. And what I came to realize out of all of this is that I value the now because it's all I've got. I value my family because they're what's close to me. I value my friends because that's what I care about. And I think that Christian saying, and certainly the Knights Templar basically used to talk about how they live to serve, right? And to an extent, I suddenly saw value in that. I thought there's so much more to this than just me. Like, what value can I add before I'm gone? What difference can I make? What stories can I tell? How can I be remembered? Which once again is a bloody selfish thing. But I thought if I can help just one other person in that time, then I've done everything that I can mortally do as someone that doesn't believe in God or the afterlife. If I can make a difference, then I've achieved everything that it is mortally possible for me to do.
Yeah.
And so where was I going with all of this, and how does it fit into tonight's podcast?
I can see how it fits in, but go.
It changed my perspective, and I was so firm, I was so landed, I was so sure of everything that I'd ever thought about, that internal consistency of thoughts. A lot of it came together a little bit more, but there was also an opening as well of what else is there? What else can I do? What else should I do?
Had you never considered that there was another, like MS was bad enough? Had you ever considered that something else may derive from that or separate to that, which may end your life earlier?
Look, I never matured past the age of 25, Peter. So in my head, I'm still bulletproof. And even with the MS, I don't get sick, right? Apart from the MS, I don't get flus. I don't get colds. If I twist my ankle, I walk it out, right? I'm not a millennial. Like, I am bulletproof.
Yeah.
So get a diagnosis like this suddenly upended my world, because 3 years less? That's not possible. Doesn't matter what age I am. I'm 25. I've got 50 plus years left. But to suddenly have all of that change in the way that it did, man, oh man, that is a gut punch like you would not believe. And yet, the one thing it did not change is my belief in the afterlife. I still am firmly committed to the fact that when I'm gone, I'm gone. And to an extent, I'm quite happy about it, because you might argue that, what we've got here on Earth is delightful and it's great and there's beautiful views at sunset and so, and all of that's wonderful. But there is also a daily torture, the torture of existence, the torture of free will, the torture of not knowing what your decisions, what outcomes they will have, how they will adversely affect someone, even if your intent was positive. But all of that kind of died away, because I just realized all I want to do now in my remaining 20, 30 years, hopefully, is just try to do the right thing. And you're going to laugh at me when I say this, but if I go into politics, Peter, I'll be going into it with the right attitude, in that I cannot be bought, right? There's things I want, things that are compassionate and empathetic and the right thing to do. And God help anybody that gets in my way.
Brilliant, mate. Just for the record, if you
Love that.
decide to get into politics and you need someone like me, mate, I'm there with you side by side. I would love to have someone who doesn't give a shit about being bought, just the reality. And mate, and as a side issue, mate, I'm really deeply, deeply sorry to hear about that diagnosis. That's
would have been different last
don't
week.
even know.
I hadn't heard at that stage.
No, nor have I, mate. Our family's been through absolute shit in the last 6 or 7 weeks, but that doesn't compare to what you've gone through. So in spite of that, you've still made an effort to be a part of this. That is admirable. That is respect. That is totally gratitude from our perspective that you've done that, mate. Thank you so much. And
You're
Please
a legend,
don't go
Joe.
anywhere. Stick
Nah,
around and
The
take
Christians
us
still
through the
suck, though,
journey.
you know that.
Take us through the journey, brother. We're with you. We're not bailing you out. You're not for that. There's plenty of other
Thank
reasons
you,
why we
guys.
can kick your ass out, but no,
Yeah.
you're deeply loved among us all, mate. We really
Yeah,
appreciate
right.
who you
Very
are and what you
much.
contribute. Yeah, that's just that. That just sucks big ones.
Yeah.
Don't know
Liv.
what else
Mate.
to say. Yeah, I mean, what I find amazing, and I'm not one of these people yet because it's never happened to me. But what I find amazing is the strength and encouragement I get and inspiration I get from people who up shit creek without a paddle in a wire canoe and still come out the other side punching, giving hope, I just those people. I don't know who the hell are. You're one of them. I wouldn't have a clue. I don't think I could do that. I'd just crawl into a corner and in the fetal position and cry. You come out fighting, you know, and you reckon
Come
you've
out
seen me.
swinging, mate.
You reckon you've seen me before. You ain't seen nothing yet. That's
Well,
bullshit.
I've
I
got
don't
nothing
know
to
how you
lose
do
now,
that.
Pete.
You didn't before either.
That's true.
I mean, you had no
That's a
credibility.
biological imperative.
You know, it's yeah, amazing, absolutely.
Anyway,
amazing.
but look, honestly, I do take inspiration out of you guys as well, though, Pete. I mean, you got a great life story. These bloody Christians, you know, they're weird as hell, but they still have some good stories to tell and some lessons to learn. And I'm there. I participate every week in good faith because I'm still trying to learn. I'm not denying anything. I'm just going, convince me.
Yeah. Well, it's a journey that we're all on, and if you can't share or be interested in other people's journey simply because it might be, you know, diametrically opposed to what you believe, and I mean, I share very little with these guys on that base level of the existence of a God, right from the very, you know, as low as you can get. I don't mean low in a negative sense, but the base starting level is a belief in a superior being, a deity, a creator, whatever. That's where we start from, and then we move forward with all the other stuff that goes with it, the scriptures, the whatever. I don't share that anymore, but what I share is deep respect for who they are and what they're doing. They're not idiots. They're intelligent, well-educated people who have spent the time to bother to go back and actually learn most of the stuff that was never taught to me when I was involved in the church. Most of it's foreign. And if you don't respect that, no matter what someone's doing, if its intention is good, then what are you? You know, we're here to listen and understand and learn and care for, and we can, you know, vehemently disagree with so many aspects of what it is that we're talking about. But that doesn't reduce the respect. In the 6 weeks that we went through with losing our cat and then our dog and my sister-in-law and blah 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 blah, Luke I haven't even met, and his wife went to extraordinary lengths to show such compassion and love and care for us. We couldn't even cope with what they did. Who gives a shit if he believes in God and I don't? What's that got to do with it?
Yeah, that's right,
These
Peter.
are human beings. Rich and I both lost a dear family member closer to, you know, to both of us.
Yeah.
That's the tragedy, not the difficulty in understanding someone's motives or someone's reasons why they believe in God because they believe in love. That's the difference. If you believe in love, call it whatever you like. Push the boat of love as much as you like. Doesn't matter what you claim it comes from or where it's going or what it is. If it's about love and caring, understanding, that's the thing that we agree on as a unified group, and that's all that really matters.
That's it. Well
You
said.
know?
I love that. I love that our conversations end up focusing on our commonality. You know, it every discussion starts out with something that in most cases is something that we're divided by intellectually, theologically, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And yet every conversation ends with what's the common ground? what can we agree on? And there's far, far more that we agree on than we disagree on. And it's almost like, what's important? The outcome is that we love one another, that we give a shit, that we actually see those in need and help. And the rest, it's window dressing. It's almost it's a thought experiment on does it really matter? It's like, if this is how your belief is functioning or your unbelief is functioning, and it's loving and it's unifying.
But wouldn't you say that intelligent, rational, anybody that's emotionally stable is going to be walking down this path? I would assume we can all agree, and we'll agree until we're blue in the face on everything except coriander, but everything else we can completely agree on.
You had to bring up the C word. All right.
I'm sorry. I know it's controversial.
I love coriander, so
me too.
You friggin' well do not. Shut your mouth.
I'll wash your mouth out with coriander.
I have it for breakfast every morning. Just
There's
nothing
one thing that's going to break this team up, Pete. It's that.
Unplugged.
It's true.
But honestly, I love you guys. Honestly.
Yeah, thank you. It's the same. Absolutely same. I mean, one of the beautiful things about getting older is you break down those barriers that you put up in front of you. The amount of people now I'm happy and comfortable with saying, you know what, I actually really love you. I've known you for 30 years. You're a part of my life. I love you and care for you. I could never do that in a million years. I was never told I was loved by my mum and dad, so it's foreign to me. But and what's amazing, guys, is that I don't think, from what I've seen, that there's anything like this anywhere in the world on YouTube. It may be similarities, and obviously with other groups of people getting on talking about this, but given time, and it's weird because last week was just crazy. It was a whole bunch of new people. It went to about 10:15 or whatever, and yet tonight, apart from Lou, there's been no response, which is really weird. But that's okay, because what we are talking about and offering up is something that I don't think you can tune in and witness anywhere else. The exact
the same, Pete,
combination that we've got.
You know how talkback radio, particularly right-leaning talkback radio, is what we've got in every capital city, right?
Yep.
It's controversy, it's discontent, it's arguments, right? And that's also what we see in the bulk of the vodcasts and podcasts that we've got online. It's people arguing, punch-ups, right? Disagreements.
Yeah.
This is slightly different in that we start with a controversial subject, but we always end up somewhere which is positive.
Yeah.
Can that possibly be popular? Does anyone care when people love each other?
I've thought about putting something like this on Talkback Radio for years. Name one time you've ever tuned into ABC or 6PR and ever heard anyone discussing God or religion. Never have. It's not. It's like they've taken the saying of, don't talk about politics and religion and to the nth degree, and their whole premise of Talkback Radio is discuss things that intrigue people. This intrigues everyone because belief touches every single person, whether it's believe in astrology or lucky numbers, or I picked this number because it's my dad's birthday, or everything that we've talked about for the last, which, by the way, just a quick reminder to you, we're coming up to our 12th anniversary, our first year anniversary soon,
Whoa.
I know. We started in December last year. That is crazy to think that we've been doing this for nearly a year. This, on the right radio station, I would be willing to get on there and say, bring it on. I'll talk about anything and everything. What do you want to talk about? Let's discuss it. Let's talk about it. I'm not scared of running away. I'm not going to be religious. I'm not going to quote Bible scriptures and stuff. I just want to talk about people's life and struggles with trying to understand what it is that's real, what it understands that they believe in, what they don't believe in. Why do I believe in this? Why do I go to this fortune teller and they tell me the same thing every time and it never changes? Stuff like that. This has got, I'm disappointed that this hasn't grown much, much bigger. and I think that we've done nothing other than just get on here and talk about it. We haven't marketed it, we haven't promoted it, we haven't done anything. So in that sense, I think it's really successful. But I want to
is.
take it places and make it
This
bigger.
is never going anywhere until Rich gets some facial hair.
We've all spoken about it, Rich. It's the one thing holding us back. But
We didn't-
luckily,
We
we're
did,
predestined
Jason.
to
We
be
agreed we
huge,
weren't going to
so-
bring it up in front of him, and you've just blown the whole cover. I mean, he's only 19. Give him a break. I mean,
baby
Yeah,
steps
you
with
old
Rich.
people,
You know this.
yeah.
But you know what? In
okay.
terms of Jace, what you were saying about the positive side, I think that was the question. Was like, do people want to hear something that ends up where everyone's finding that common
Yeah.
ground, or do they want people kicking
Yeah.
each other? And I think it's proven people do want people kicking each other. That's
Yeah, they
that's
do.
why gossip mags exist. That's
Of course.
that's not even in question. But I think you look at the success of like Ted Lasso, right?
Yeah.
Which is more
Yeah.
than just an amazing TV show. It
Yeah.
was different. It was
But there's still
overwhelmingly
conflict in that
positive.
show, Luke.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Still, of course, there are. Yeah, without a doubt. And yet, there's something about that character. There's something about the change. There's something that's feel good. That's not saccharine. It's not. I don't know. It feels attainable. Yeah. I watch that and I'm going, oh man, this is that. That's Ted Lasso's like Jesus. You know, he is what I imagine. That's like how you live out kindness, and then it challenges you and that sort of stuff. And yet I'm going, wow, this is something people are just blown away and they're surprised and they're on board with something that's overwhelmingly positive. I don't know. That gives me hope that
What do
I
you
think,
guys remember of the Orange People?
Oh, I was quite involved with the sannyasins.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I remember a lot
Yeah,
of that.
it's
stuff.
6 months of my
Bad
life.
one, Sri Rajneesh and Sheena and Sheila and so on.
Yep,
What was their
absolutely.
message, Pete?
God, from what I can remember, it was love and hope and acceptance, and all they were about was love and beautifying the relationship between individual people,
Mm.
and
Which is why
and
they
buying-
exploded so quickly over here.
and buying lots of Rolls Royces if you're
Yeah,
the
of course.
bug one.
And Carrie Valley.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
And,
interesting.
and
you
when,
should say
and
that
when
because
Sheila was on
that's
60 Minutes.
literally 500 meters from where I am right now.
Oh, really?
Is it?
Of course, yeah. And Sheila became famous because she was interviewed in 60 Minutes and said something, and she said "tough titties," and we were all outraged.
Every school kid my age, that was the insult
Right.
for the rest of our lives. If Rochelle gets out of hand,
What a
Yeah.
legacy.
Imagine
Imagine that you've done this amazing interview and
Yeah.
people only ever remember 2 words that you said. You know, it's like,
Yeah. We've got some response, Fenton, mate. Where have you been? We've missed you dearly, Fenton. Just done a peace sign and a heart, and same to you, brother. And Tam, of course, who made some comments about last week. Luke, I don't know if you saw it on the podcast follow up. There was a couple
Oh,
of comments
thank you,
from
Tara.
Tam. Don't feel
I didn't.
disappointed in the success of the podcast. I think it's made a big difference in people's lives. I've personally grown a lot in understanding of other people's beliefs. That's exactly, Tam, what we are. We're not trying to.
Thanks, Tam.
I said about putting this podcast together because I wanted to stick it up Christians and let them know that
No.
they're wrong. And I still do. And so far I've been highly successful in doing that. No. But it evolved. It evolved as you get to respect and understand people. Matt Dillahunty is one of the most outspoken atheists in the world. He's from Austin, Texas, and he, similar to me, he was in a not Baptist, but he was in a Baptist church, ready to become a preacher, and fell out of love with God, and the whole thing, turned his back on it, and now he's an outspoken atheist who tours the world debating people and arguing with them. To me, he's one of the most obnoxious, rude, arrogant, belittling creep who shares the same belief as me to a degree. I've decided in 2024 and 2025, I'm not calling myself an atheist. I mentioned this last week. You guys weren't here, but Luke and I, when I said, I'm not going to call myself an atheist the same way I'm not going to call myself an leprechaunist.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it's
true.
it's silly. It's talking about something that doesn't even exist. Atheism doesn't exist in the sense that it only has an identity when you decide to project your feelings against God on it or whatever. So it just floats to me and doesn't go anywhere. So anyway, and he's the kind of guy that gives it atheism and people who don't believe in God a really bad name because he abuses the crap out of people. He's rude. He's horrible. This is not what we do, and I think there's definitely an avenue for it to be able to disagree, but be nice about it. Don't be, you know, we disagree. Sometimes we have a heated debate or whatever.
Yeah.
Rarely, because we are, you know, fervently against each other's positions, as it were. But it needs to be done respectfully. And people like Tam, I'm not disappointed in the success of the podcast in the sense that if the podcast has a success, then there's nothing to be disappointed in. I think it's been successful, very successful for many people because we don't get the same result every week like we did last week. I tend to be negative about it and go, oh, no one's listening. The world is our oyster and we can make this as big as we want. We haven't really put any stuff into it to do that. So we shouldn't be surprised, but it's lovely to have people like you constantly supporting us. The comments you put on, I mean, that means an absolute world to us, really. So thank you. The other comment you've just put on, it's great to see the love between you all and also support for each other. And Jace, I think you're an inspiration. Absolutely. Yeah, he is. And this is why it's so critical what we do. And what we've done takes an enormous amount of humility. It requires us to not be obsessed about thinking that we're right, that we respect and love and care for one another. Because at the end of the day, take away all of our labels, we are just human beings on this planet doing what we can do to survive and to have an impact. And for you, Jace, I know you want to leave this planet better than you found it in, and there's no doubt that is going to be 100% achievable for you, if not already.
Only if I'm allowed to shoot people I don't agree with.
Sorry?
Well, you know, the trick is just don't get caught, Jace. There's a lot of land to bury some stuff out where you are. So
it sounds like a short career in politics, mate.
Very, very short. Yeah, when I shoot, I mean with my mouth.
Oh, of course.
Okay, yeah.
Metaphor. We're big on metaphor.
Bury them with argument. Yeah, that's right.
Fenton says James Fodor, Aussie, a fellow Aussie, is one of my favourite atheists. He's very cordial and clever. I don't know of him, James Fodor. You guys heard of him?
Yeah.
No, we should look him up. Maybe he'll come and say hi to us.
I'll look him up. And Fenton says, like y'all. Yeah, we like you too, mate. You've been a fundamental part of this podcast. As I said, coming up to our 12th. It can't be a year. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
You know, I've been thinking about what we've been doing here as well. A lot of people, you know, we're picking on Dillahunty a bit, but he's representative of a kind of way of doing it. That seems like a game. Like people are parts of a game, and you do this performance so that people are entertained, and that's all right. But I think what we're doing is our conversation is not to necessarily convince each other. That might be a benefit if the argument's really well, because we are very thoughtful guys. And I can tell you what, we've been going for a year. I have changed significantly some of the things I think about and the way I approach things because of what Rowie and Jace have said. But that's not the prime. I think the prime, our attitude is we're speaking so that we can understand. And if we understand, that's a win. because
Rich, I would be
even if we
horrified.
don't end up agreeing, we appreciate the viewpoint. We understand where people are coming from, and know that, you know, for me, it's reduces a lot of moral attachments to people's behaviors when you go, oh, they've got very good reasons for seeing that way. Maybe they're not evil idiots after all. You know, not talking about you
be
two.
Mate.
horrified and mortified if I thought that anything I'd said over the last 8 months had caused you to doubt your faith whatsoever.
I know,
that is
not doubt my faith, but
Absolutely
really,
not my intention.
no, think about things a bit more deeply, because as you said, you think about stuff from a certain point of view, and if you start saying some things, you go, hang on, now I've got an extra way of looking at this thing, and I've got a better idea. And it's, I guess what it is, the faith is not being lost. The part that's being lost is the naivety of it. There's certain naiveties of seeing the world that you go, okay, that works in a very small, sheltered, when everything's going well. But when you broaden it out, you go, oh, I'm not leaving that thing behind, but it gets changed and actually gets better. It becomes expansive. It embraces more when it's encounters other people. And so, yeah, that's what I hope. I hope people like Fenton and Tamara and the others, we're not trying to convince or break something for you. We're hoping to expand your embrace of the world, I guess.
I think we understand. I just wrote this down as you're saying that, Rich, so I wouldn't forget. And this applies to all of us, and I don't mean it in a negative sense. What's a killer in life is the arrogance of thinking that I must be right. For every perspective. I want everyone here to think, do you know what? I'm never going to stop looking at the possibility that all my ideas might actually be wrong. And that's not a fear. I was taught
that's right.
in my whole Christian word, don't ever doubt for a second. Don't ask questions. Don't doubt for a second. That is the most ridiculous advice you could ever give any child or any adult about anything.
Exactly.
Once you reach the arrogance of I am right, and therefore that must make you wrong, that's when you become a Matt Dillahunty and someone who just is attacking other people. I am totally open to the possibility of being wrong. I was talking to a dear friend from work who I haven't seen since I left the radio station in Mandurah today about a dream she had. A friend of hers, dear friend, died. And she had a dream, and she said, in this dream, he was with me. I could feel it, I could sense it, everything about it was real. It was in this beautiful place, and he was with me, and we just talked, and it was just lovely and beautiful and stuff. And she said, you know, what do you think? Does that sound crazy? I said, who am I? Who am I? You experienced that. You felt that it was real. How arrogant would it be to say, nah, that was just a dream? She said, but it might have been a dream. I said, yeah, it might have been a dream. I don't know. You don't know. It doesn't matter. What matters is it made you feel beautiful love toward this guy. It could be just some supernatural experience. It could be just a dream, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm not anyone to tell you that that's bullshit. I'm not anyone to tell anyone that anything they believe in is bullshit. If you believe in astrology, go on. Who am I to say it's not real? There was a time in my life where I could spot a star sign from 10 feet away after having a conversation with him. You're an Aquarian? Yeah. Okay. I can tell you two things straight away about Aquarians. Your car's a mess and your bedroom's a mess. Every single Aquarian I've ever said that to, they've gone, how did you know that? I said, I don't know. I'm just playing with the knowledge. It's probably bullshit. But I've never met an Aquarian yet whose inside of their car doesn't look like a rubbish tip, and nor does their bedroom.
Leo. You're a Leo. I bet you were born in August.
I sense a lion. I'm getting a vision of a lion with you. I don't know what that is about. You know, it's like I could seriously, I could win so much money from people. I'd go, I can guess your star sign in 5 minutes. And I was very rarely ever wrong. Now, that plays with my mind because I could categorize people into star signs and characteristics. But then I'd look at it logically as a human now and go, this makes no sense. It worked, and I don't know how, and I don't know why, but I've been married twice, both to Taurian women who are almost identical.
With clean
I don't
cars,
know.
though.
Hey?
Yeah,
With clean cars and bedrooms, though.
Yeah. Well, clean, yeah.
Hey,
Bedrooms
do
were
cold
clean.
reading.
Bedrooms were clean until I went in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Fenton again has put up another comment. It's more exciting to hear something new from someone you disagree with than debating the same old topics and disagreeing
Yeah, I
immediately.
agree.
Yeah. Fenton, a couple of months ago, and I hate to bring this up again, you mentioned something about a possibility of expanding this podcast, that you had some knowledge that we could utilize. Really love to talk to you about it so that we can actually bring this to more people. Yes, the people that listen to it love it for what it is. It may have a tiny audience. I don't know. And I'd like to experiment the possibility of expanding it so that it has a bigger audience. And when you think in the history of human beings, we have the biggest audience in front of us than ever has been in the history of mankind. We have literally the ability to touch and talk to people by the billions worldwide.
That's
And
true.
when we're not
Three out
using.
of the 4 guys are really good looking.
And if all goes to plan and it really grows, we could all fight Mike Tyson.
Mate,
Yeah,
I've
that's,
got a
that's the progression.
That's how you know you've made it.
for
That
$20
guy.
million, I'd pretend as well. Don't worry about that. What a scam. What an absolute
I
scam.
would fight Tyson for $20 million.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'd fight you for 10. Be
I still
fun.
don't think I'd get in the ring with him. He's a scary man.
20 million?
Oh, he is, but they were told not to. There's a I don't know. There's a still to change subject from what we're talking about to this. There was still where he had an opportunity. The guy was
there's a
right
few,
open,
right?
led him with the right hand, and realised that if he carried through, he would have knocked him out. So he just took his fist away.
Yeah,
What a joke!
yeah.
What a joke! It was an entertainment level rating, not about it actually a boxing
A
match.
proper boxing match, yeah.
I don't think anyone
Yeah.
could get in the ring with Mike Tyson and actually live to talk about it. But there you go.
There's no rumble in the jungle.
Oh, see, now you're talking
Mhm.
Muhammad Ali. Oh my
All
goodness!
time.
Oh, stop it!
See,
Anyway.
sport, you're talking sport. This is like religion to me.
I just saw
Sorry.
Jason's eyes just gloss
Sorry.
over.
I'm going out. For
Yeah,
a
I'm
second.
with Jace now. I'm a what's the atheist equivalent of a
Yeah,
sport?
that's me too.
Yeah. I've got like straight C's in phys ed, and I think they're all pity C's.
I always got picked last in every team. Always.
Yeah, me too.
Mainly because I wanted to. And then they would all go and play soccer in the cold winter in the rain. And I would go to the library and read a book.
Yep.
I hear you.
And who's the winner now, hey?
Cristiano Ronaldo.
That's
Oh,
He did all right, I
exception proves the rule.
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I've
Yeah.
long wondered about, like, maybe this is something that we can cover in the podcast one day, is the similarity between the ferocity of support for sporting teams and religion. Because there is
Both my knives.
certainly an unhinged element to it.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
The back half of the newspaper, last bit of the news, very often the first story in the news.
Hmm.
Oh, like, come on. Sport isn't news.
And then it's like major conflict in,
Yeah.
some other country, and it doesn't make it. It just doesn't rank above, John Worsfold visited
Palestine.
a chemist. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's right.
you know, that should be leading the bloody bulletins every night. But what have we got? Ben Cousins is back.
Yeah.
Oh, he's on Dancing with the Stars. Oh my God.
Our 90-minute special coming up.
I
do
wish the
agree
guy
with that.
no ill, but
Oh no.
at the same time, how many opportunities are you going to give someone?
Well, we do love a comeback story. That's
That's an Aussie.
It is.
term, isn't it?
Guys, but I mean, I don't want to get into too much detail here. There's no legal peril in saying it because it's the absolute truth. But this is the same guy that promised to put a bomb under the car of his wife and children.
Yeah.
And now they welcome him back onto TV with open arms. I mean, where do we draw the line?
Yeah. Well, I know where we draw the line. At wife and kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who did
We've
that?
got
Who
enough
was the
problem with
person
all of
to put a
that.
bomb under a
Not to
car?
cancel a guy,
Can't hear
but
you, Pete.
you welcome them back in when they've made amends in that sort of area. You know, I'm not
Yeah.
for cancelling. I'm for, hey mate, that's just not on. And you know, with a voice comes a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
You've made a big mess before you come on. Let's clean up that mess before you come back on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Who put
Yeah.
the bomb under the car? Who are you talking about?
No, he was threatening to.
Who?
At the time, that was the big threat. Ben Cousins.
Yeah, who was threatening it?
To his
I missed-
estranged wife and children threatened to put a bomb under their car.
Cuz.
Who?
What do you
Name
mean, who?
Name the person
He
who threatened.
He
Sorry?
said he was going to do that to his wife and kids.
Who's he? I missed
I'm
the
just watching
beginning of
this
the
play out.
conversation.
This is amazing.
Oh, sorry, you've missed the beginning of the conversation. Ben Cousins.
Oh, good, we got there eventually. Okay.
Mate, that was who's on first. That was
Yeah,
Alex
exactly.
Miller right there.
What's
The
on
modern
second?
version.
What's on second? What?
Who?
Oh,
Who's on first?
wise guy.
I think I might have a couple of clues on why we're not growing as much as we should.
Oh, that was gold. That's
brilliant.
comedy
Oh.
gold right there. Yes, I mean, yeah, you're not going to get any. Ben Cousins has had his moments, but I'm glad he's back. I mean, I'm a sports person through and through. I played football, cricket. I was a champion athlete boy, so I'm all in it, mate. So you got no chance.
And
of
we're
getting
one-eyed
anywhere.
Eagles, and Cousins holds a special place as well. It's
When
hard.
we
It's very
we
hard.
did the best draft we've had for a long time, and we are
Mhm.
back, baby.
Yep, Jason knows all about the draft. He followed it very closely.
yeah.
I can
But
tell.
there are things I love about AFL. In particular, what I particularly like, Pete, you'd
Mm.
appreciate this, is the
Yeah.
fact that they understand the dynamics and the type of people they're dealing with. And so what they do is not only have they got goalposts, they give you extra points for missing, which I love. I think that's so inclusive. It's a really nice way of doing it. They're looking after everybody. But there's one thing I think that they could add into AFL, which would even make me watch. And
Nudity,
it's also opening the game up to the younger players, Pete.
right?
Landmines. Would make it
Yes.
extremely entertaining, and the younger players will be constantly coming through.
But it shortened,
That's
yeah,
the flaw in my thinking.
yeah. No, shorten your playing future, but I understand your
Well, they're on
slightly
big money. They can
somewhat-
afford artificial limbs.
somewhat deranged
Yeah,
view
look.
of the game, but
If
I
you
mean,
do,
what
if
we-
you do go into
There are no
politics,
bad
you have
ideas.
to delete every episode up until now.
Yeah.
You're going to get done. Question
Glad
time.
we gotta
is
scrub it.
Horrific for you. Landmines, you say?
Do not make this one of the shorts. Whoever does the shorts, this is not one of the shorts.
another comment from Fenton, which is at 9:45 Australian Western Standard Time. Fenton, we know, is in LA, and so he's probably getting ready to go to work. He's a Tyler saying, I definitely think guests who have a big fan base like Eve would help. Algorithm the fastest, unless you guys want to start
Edgelording.
edgelording. Never heard that. What is edgelording?
Ooh.
I hesitantly Googled it. I was like,
What is edgelording?
Edging's very different.
I bet you it's a new wanky word for 2024, is it?
Basically, it's being shock jocks, I think is what we'd call it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Fenton, just for the record, I contacted Eve, and I talked to you guys about. I was trying to get hold of her. Eve was framed. That's what she calls herself. She, like me, was a Christian for 25 years. She's come out. She's copped so much flack right throughout America. Cruel, horrible, nasty stuff. I contacted her and said, Eve, we have this podcast. Love to get you on. Are you interested? She said, yes. Pick a date in October, and I'll do it. And I have contacted her for some obscure reason. She's either incredibly disorganized or doesn't want to do it, but said she was as keen as mustard to get on the podcast. Thanked me for the invitation, and I've given up on trying to get her on here. I don't know what. She's just got married. She's got an album out.
You haven't prayed hard enough.
A couple of things.
Sorry?
A couple of things
You
going
didn't
on.
pray hard enough.
Yeah, didn't pray. Yeah. I mean, we have so much in common, and we've talked about that. She's on every day. She's very,
Young,
very visual.
Beautiful, newly married
Yeah.
album. Yeah, sounds like
Yep.
you got heaps in common.
Yeah.
If you've just tuned in, that's probably likely the last thing you're ever going to hear from Richard Stalls. Okay?
Hey, Richard,
Yeah.
define
So
edgeboarding for us. Can you define edging for us?
No.
No. Behave yourself, Jason.
It's lonely down there in Albany, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so Fenton, if you can have some sort of influence on Eve to get her on this podcast, that was exactly what I had in mind to increase the algorithms and the popularity of what we're doing. And it went so close, but it never happened. October came and went, and I didn't hear from her. So
It
I'm
is
not sure what
predestined, so don't even worry about it.
True. It
It's
was
gonna
meant to
happen, it's
happen.
gonna happen.
It was meant to be. You know, and I've defended her
The Lord
so
wills it.
from these creeps in America who keep abusing her for having the audacity. And one of them even said to me the other day, he said, "Oh, yeah, well, you obviously never were a Christian as well." And I went, "Okay, sit down, get ready to read, because I'm going to teach you a little bit about that you just accused me of saying, you know." But it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to defend because
It's impossible. It's designed
that
that way.
could very well be true. As far as I was concerned, I was deeply a Christian in every possible way. There was nothing that I was ever missing from my life as far as being a fully committed Christian. But the problem is with what they're saying is that once a Christian, you can't go back. If you go back, it's only because you were never a Christian. So you can't win. They've got one of these beautiful
It's a rigged
coin-
game they're playing. Yeah.
Of course, that's right. Heads on both
You should
sides.
just put it on the front of the door, though, when you're coming in. Not all are welcome. It's just like,
Hmm.
we'll love you until you have a change of heart or a change of mind or go through something. Just,
Yeah.
be honest about it. Not everyone's welcome.
Did you
I
wear a
said
little
this, right.
crucifix, mate?
What's that?
Hey,
Did you wear a crucifix?
Him?
Yeah.
Roddy.
Pete, did you wear one? A crucifix?
No, he wouldn't
No,
have. Not
never.
as a Pentecostal.
Right. So that's a thing. Pentecostals don't wear that sort of
They
stuff.
do now. They do now, but back in the day, no jewelry.
if you're a Calvinist, however, you had one indelibly stamped on your forehead.
Ah,
Yeah,
No?
you cannot.
If you were one of the elect.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're chosen, and yeah,
what about
got no choice.
tattoos? Do you have any religious icons tattooed
No.
on you?
One of the things I learned.
I've got Jesus riding a dragon on my back that covers the whole thing, but people
one
are,
of the-
they're split on it.
One of the things I learned as a Pentecostal is that Jesus is no longer on the cross. He's come down, so it's irrelevant.
Oh.
The cross is totally historically insignificant in that lots of people got crucified. It was an implement used. It just happened to be that shape that they were nailed to or tied to or whatever, and that's how they died. it's not. It was only the Christians that took it and somehow made it into a modern. Am I right, guys, in saying that it was never
It's the equivalent of, if it happened today, people wearing the electric chair on a chain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually is
Shocking.
one of the is yeah, you're right with Pentecostals. We don't like the cross. We'd rather sing about Sunday and the resurrection and that because we like victory and it's rah rah rah. But for me, it's the cross is the center of everything. And it's probably too late to start talking about a new line of discussion. But I mean, it's the cross is that's the differentiator. It's absurd.
Are you serious? You're saying that the cross is the big deal for you? I thought it would have been nothing.
Significantly.
But what about all the other people that died on
the
the
Nike
cross?
swoosh.
It's not like the cross was a unique thing for Jesus. The cross was a normal way of crucifixion. Why is it so special?
Because a God who's willing to go to a cross is unheard of and is upside down. It's backwards. It redefines everything about what we thought God looked like and how God would act. And
But he could have died anyway. Anyway, would have been humiliating.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. Like whether it was a cross or whether he was, chucked in a pit and bitten by snakes, doesn't really matter. It's
you just put your Mustang in reverse then and went flying backward. Come on, you said cross is everything, and now you're saying it's not important.
Yeah, no, it's the fact that he died.
The historical fact.
The historical fact.
Why is the importance on the cross? The cross is irrelevant. It's how he died, a humiliating public death. But the fact he was on a cross or on a bed or on the ground or the dirt or whatever is what.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. The cross had no significance prior to that moment. So I'm not saying there's some magical wood that he went up on, and that's what made the difference. It was about
it was willow.
It was no. It's that moment, right? The moment of here's this guy who is the representative of everything who God is, the exact image of God, willing to do that rather than express violence on those who are inflicting violence on him. It just redefines everything about what God is like, who God is, and how we are to live, how we are to then treat one another. It upends everything because we think of power one way, we think of being in control one way, we think of what a king is in one way, and it just was turned on its head. And they didn't understand it then. We struggle to understand it now. And yet I think when we truly grapple with it, it changes everything. So yeah, it's great.
But when the Romans decided to kill Jesus, the cross wasn't significant. It's like Gisbergen winning a race and giving all the credit to the car and not the driver. Do you know what I mean? The cross is 1 minute you're saying the cross is irrelevant, but then you're saying that was the game changer. Jesus wasn't the first person to be crucified.
No, but when I say the cross, I'm talking about. I just use that to reference that moment. So that scene, that decision.
Right.
Not about the actual cross. It's not like if we could only find the bit of wood from that cross, that would be, it's got nothing to do with that. I'm just using that it's like that's the moment, rather than it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'd be saying the same thing if he was killed in some other way, but it's the fact that he chose to lay down his life, that he went to the cross, or that he went to his death. A dead God. Put it that way.
Yeah.
A God who chooses death and lays down his...
Which is what it is, but I just think you're giving way too much homage to the fact that it was a cross. The cross has become the emblem of Christianity and death, where it perhaps shouldn't have been. It's irrelevant how he died. Because it wasn't unique. It wasn't unique to Jesus. It was a form of punishment to many people, how they were going to be publicly humiliated, hung up on a cross. And the cross now has become something about the shape, whereas the shape is just purely the exact kind of shape you would have if you wanted to stretch out a human being on wood and nail them to it. They needed something at the bottom, they needed something at the sides, and they needed something at the top. And then next minute, the cross is the symbol of Jesus crucifixion. Jesus' resurrection was never about people wearing the something around their neck about the where he was laid and a rock rolled across in front of it. That became irrelevant. Yet that was the bang. That was he's been resurrected. He's gone. The tomb is empty. No one ever wore that around their neck. It was only about the cross, which is completely irrelevant to how he died. It just seems strange that they adopted it.
Yeah, but it's a symbol. All symbols transcend themselves. They go beyond what they actually are because they represent something more than that. And that's what the cross is. It's just a symbol that represents that moment. And I think that the early church recognized that it wasn't the resurrection that was, whilst important, that was the victory. The victory actually was the death. The main point, the thing that turned everything upside down was a God who was willing to do that was non-violent, that redefined power and all that sort of stuff. That changes everything. So I think the cross is the significant thing, but it is just a symbol, And for me, I'm vehemently opposed to the death penalty and any form of execution. I do like the subversive nature, that the symbol of perhaps the worst execution method ever devised in human history becomes a symbol of hope. I like that, but it is a symbol. It's just whether it's a cross or something else. It's
I've noticed something else that you Christians do, Luke, symbol-wise.
Waffle?
Have you noticed, Pete? You'd noticed this too. So much advertising, they put a secret little fish on there.
I had a fish. I had a fish on the back of my car back in the day. For some stupid reason, it's like personal number plates. You like to tell other people about how you feel about things and what team you barrack for.
Tells me that when that guy comes around to fix my toilet, I shouldn't talk about certain things.
It just lets people know we're in the club.
Yeah,
except unlike Fight Club, we talk about the club.
I'm confused about Jason's plumbing analogy.
No, don't you think about my plumbing, Pete? It's not none of your. My plumbing's fine.
Okay, righto. Yep, got you there. Fenton, I never liked the cross imagery as a Christian. Interesting. I didn't mind it. My very first vision ever, when I was a little boy, we had the Encyclopedia Britannica, as most people did from my generation. And I remember looking through one day at this book, and I think I've talked about it before. And there was this just opened it up, and there was this Jesus on a cross, and there was a soldier lifting up on the end of a pole. I think, if I remember correctly, it was vinegar or something that he was trying to push into his mouth, and he had the crown of thorns on his head, and the blood coming from his feet, because it showed the depiction of the nails actually driven through his hands and feet. And I would love to go back to that moment and try and remember what it was that I thought of, but I know it was deeply, deeply disturbing looking at, and I thought, well, this is just a comic thing or something. And I think I asked my mum or my dad what it was, and they told me. And that stuck with me forever, about who is this Jesus guy and what the hell did he do to be treated like that? And I never found out. My mum and dad were not people to explain things. Like, it just took 30 years for me to ask Dad who the woman was, and he said, it's your mother. But so it was a bit, it was a little bit vague back in those days, Mum and Dad. So I got no answers out of that. But yeah, that's interesting. One more from Fenton. It always makes me curious about the details of how you pre-planned the old new covenant sacrifice in detail. It seemed like God was reacting in real time more than watching something he already designed. That's deep at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night, Fenton. I concur totally.
And I think you'll find these two Christians actually agree with you.
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah. The accretions of the Old Testament sacrifice system wasn't like some grand plan in God's mind, so that when Jesus came along, he'd be fulfilling it all. I think the story goes, Stone Age people, I'm going to speak a bit controversial here. Child sacrifice was a thing, and probably a thing with the people of God that they sort of dropped over the ages, and there's some racial memory of it.
Definitely a thing.
You know, racial memory of it, and so then the substitutionary stuff happens. So it's not like some grand, beautiful theological image. It's a growing body of just people doing stuff. When Jesus comes along, the theologizing, the making sense of what's happened
That's not a word.
in the light of being Jews, then they're making some matches. I don't think God was doing this like nice little plan. I'll make him die this way, and I'll do this bit because that matches the Old Testament. I think that's really what happened afterwards, is they're connecting the dots in their own faith tradition, going, we were Jews. We did the sacrificial system. Now we believe in Jesus. Hey, let's draw some imagery between it and have understand it in that way. They were making sense of what they're experiencing rather than some beautiful story of sacrifice, because it's not a beautiful story. Sacrifice is not beautiful at all.
What do you think about the depiction of Mel Gibson's film? I found it
Poor.
absolutely.
a
I found
nightmare.
it. Yeah, I found it true in the sense that it portrayed what I had believed happened in all its imagery,
I think it
in
could be
all its
fairly accurate
brutality.
to what we understand. Yeah, I think it's
Correct,
probably fairly accurate.
Did
It
not
was, it was an
glorify.
awful thing that they did.
Oh my
We're not
God,
talking
it was
about
horrific.
Apocalypto here, are we?
No.
Yeah,
Lethal
No.
Weapon 2.
Right.
I like
Right.
Apocalypto. I thought
With
that was
Gibbs.
a good film. I enjoyed that, but
Yeah.
that was
No, I think it was good. I mean, good's not really the word you'd use for it, but it was accurate. It was something
Did
that's
you see the mission?
well
Uh,
accurate as far as
No, yeah.
What's the movie?
Oh,
Um,
The Passion of the Christ.
Passion of the
Christ,
Christ.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a book on called Crucifixion by a guy called Martin Hengel, who's a scholar and a historian, and it was a very difficult read. Not
Yeah.
academic wise, although it is very academic, but the detail and how much he goes into exactly what happened and the practice of crucifixion, the history of it, what it was, all that sort of stuff. Not from a theological point of view, from a historical point of view, and it was.
Yeah.
Like worse than we could even imagine. So it's almost like you look at the Passion of the Christ and it doesn't go far enough, if that makes sense. It's not a nice thing to even.
Well, and we must remember it's an adaptation of something which we've never actually visualized. It's like this is where they have a film. It's based on a true story.
Mm.
The elements of truth within that are never defined. It could be
Even like
one
all the
thing.
Renaissance paintings.
The Renaissance paintings.
Yeah.
Shaped
how
a
much
lot.
thought can we put into any of those? I mean, we actually base a lot of our knowledge and our learnings off those
Huge.
depictions,
Yeah.
which were simply the interpretation of a Michelangelo or a Da Vinci.
I think one of the greatest problems with humankind is their ability to become obsessed with historical hearsay. Most of what we take science out of this, but I believe most of what we talk about today and what we are convinced is real and historical and happened. I think the vast majority, if not all of it, is based upon stuff we don't know. As human beings, we love making up shit without actually knowing every story that you can read about in the Bible. There's no proof that any of it happened that way. And we talked about this lot last week, Luke, about how so many people around the world, like Stephen Fry and Hitchens and stuff, paint the picture of this horrific God. He had nothing to do with the writings of ignorant people in the Old Testament, what they wrote about God. He's up there. If he's real, he's going, I didn't say this. I didn't tell them to do this. I didn't do this. This is you've made all this shit up because the Old Testament God is who you say it is. And so that's packaged away going, okay, so that's the Old Testament God. They're going, no. They're Stephen Fry's bagging God out for being this horrific, horrible, child-killing monster. None of that's got anything to do with God. He didn't write any of that stuff. It was written by men who thought that that's what the God of the then was all about. And so he's worn that forever.
That is the major difference, I think, between Luke, Rich, and me. I don't know about you, Rowie, but I think I've said once before, this idea of an omnipotent, you want to call it a consciousness or the universe or whatever else, I can get down with that idea because I don't know any better. What I can't get down with is the whole biblical fable. And I love the teachings, but to assign it a level of spirituality, for me, that's just one step too far. But learning is brilliant, and God is fantastic, but it's the middle bit that I struggle with.
The reality that Chris, that Luke and what's your name again? Rich can't
it's that
deny.
Time
It is that everything they talk about relies 100% on their belief in something that can't be proven. That's the struggle that I get against. I mean, you cannot prove to me that anything in the Bible is real. It's impossible if you want empirical evidence. If you want, I'm trying to have a fight. I mean, this is a part of the mature discussion that we've got to. I think it's about just trying to be honest and mature about the whole thing. Everything about religion is stuff that happened thousands of years ago, and we have no current evidence that we can present to show any of it was real.
Well, if you're talking about scriptural evidence, yeah, that's to have any relationship with scripture, you've got it's a step of faith. It's like you're buying into a system. However, depends what you mean by religion. A lot of people use it like as a system of beliefs. Yeah, well then that is a system of beliefs that's embedded in a culture and documents, and it's a living culture. So it's vastly different than it was 100 years ago to 1,000 years ago to 2,000 years. It's a living thing. However, if we're talking about the metaphysics of belief, well, there's most of my understanding of that actually has nothing to do with scripture whatsoever. It's got everything to do with the nature of human experience and causality and rational thinking and what it means to be human. That raises a whole lot of questions for me. Yeah, just like Jason said. But yeah, as soon as you go to scripture, there's no way to prove anything there. It's a decision that, okay, as a part of a community, this is important to us. So that's a decision you make. But Robbie, you're right. There's a type of Christianity which is probably the majority at the moment, which basically has this idea that you can somehow prove the Bible is real through all these sorts of ways, and it's actually quite embarrassing to watch. It's just like it's literally okay. I won't harp on about it because I don't want to be mean about people, but it's embarrassing to watch.
No, I don't. Well, I don't think you should worry about that. I mean, I think that it's a reality. I think that if you're going to make these claims that somehow it's evidence based, I come from a science mind where I want evidence, and if there is no evidence, I'm not prepared to back my faith. I did that for 25 years, and I ended up getting to the point where I go, I can't do that anymore. I can't believe in something that I can't see. If that were the only issue, that would be fine. But there's all of the other issues we've piled on top of that, I think, since we started this podcast with the geographical significance and stuff like that. It just, I find the more I talk about it, the harder it is to be on your side of finding yourselves connecting. I hate doing this. I keep putting hand motions in front of me, like you can see it. I'm doing this. And I'm looking down and going, this must look really friggin' impressive to you guys. And I'm going, hang on a minute, you can't see it. It's up here. It's Ricky Gervais, that unity thing. Do you know what I mean? I want to experience credibility for the argument. That's what if you could express credibility to the argument where I go, you know what? I get it. I totally get it. I'm not on your side, but I get where you're coming from. It's indisputable. It's just bang, beautiful. Love it. Love it. It's as provable as a scientific fact is. I just want to get to that point, and the further I dig into it, the less it becomes real, but it's still really interesting and exciting. And I love the fact that two incredibly smart guys that I love are sold on this, and I'm assuming that there must be something I'm missing because these guys are not fuckwits. So there must be.
Hey, I'm putting that on my business card.
Share one, Rich.
My name is Richard Strawls, as quoted by Peter Rowe. I'm not a fuckwit. Give me the job. I love it.
One of two non-fuckwits.
His resume.
That's the other podcast.
If you were both just meaningless losers, we wouldn't be doing this. But
Yes,
I'm longing for something that I can hang my hat on, and I can't find it yet.
Yeah,
And I may never find
me too.
it.
Me too, Rowie.
My theological genius stops at 9:30. So by this stage, man, you got no chance of any sense coming out of my mouth.
I
But
did this
before that, it would have been beautiful. I could have explained it all to you.
The
I already
eloquent.
did this 3 hours with you last week, mate. Come on, make an impression, please. Do your best. Do you know what? At the end of the day, what I find beautiful and contentment with is that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change all of the things we currently have in common: family, friends, relatives, sport, marriage, whatever. All of those things still coexist
Facial hair,
beautifully.
other than Rich.
Yeah, well, yeah. You know, all of those things don't suddenly go, hang on a minute. Oh, no, sorry, mate. I completely, vehemently disagree with you on the religion thing. So that's the end of our relationship. Nice seeing you. Bye. It doesn't matter. You share all of the great things, and like if we base this whole thing on Jace's love for sport, we would have gotten nowhere because it doesn't matter. Oh, sorry, you're not in the sport, Jace. Yeah, sorry, mate. We can't be friends. Sorry.
Where the platitudes come from. We're all on our own journey.
Yes. Well, as it turns out, some of us are on your journey, whether we like it or not.
God help them.
What worries me tonight, particular, Jason, is that you've been drinking. Is that cider or beer?
Tooheys extra dry.
Where's your red wine, mate?
Under the desk.
Oh, actually,
Where is it?
Has enough beer,
Oh, no,
falls
I put
under
it
the desk, and that's time for the red wine, is it?
Jace doesn't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing.
I also have a bag of potato chips.
boom,
Excellent.
sweet chili. I'm pretty sure that's not on your recommended special.
Hey, when did we get
right?
sponsors?
Some sort of camembert, mild and creamy.
Can we do that? Can we get sponsors?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It looks like Jace has got some already.
No, that's called a wife.
Ah,
Green olives.
Oh, stop it. That is me
You know
feeling
how
sorry
to
for
eat
you.
it while we're on.
yeah.
Eat
I
away,
still haven't
mate.
had dinner yet. I'm gonna go eat my dinner. That's making me hungry.
Oh,
Although I
you're
hate
wasting.
olives.
You're fading away to nothing, are you, mate?
Could you
What do you-
notice?
All man, all beard.
it's hard to notice with the immense muscle all over my body, but I am fading away.
That's not what I see from here, mate. I'm sorry.
That tight white shirt, mate. It's making us all quiver.
You should see Tash.
Oh,
It's sending her wild in the background.
no comment.
Is that what that is?
Mm-hmm. That's
Um,
why I'm wearing it.
Mate, an update on Tilly. What's happening with your puppy dog?
Yeah, she's good. She's going okay. Yep,
Yeah,
she's
beautiful.
still gone. Yeah, she hasn't gone backwards, so that's good. She's
Excellent.
all
Ah,
yeah,
so
still
good.
good day by day. Yeah, but I'm effectively a veterinarian in the medicine administering. But yeah, she's okay.
Mate, we got to the point, and we still have. We're actually doing injections for our dogs at home.
Well, yeah, it's
But
Yeah.
Mabel, you couldn't get Mabel in and out of the car toward her,
yeah.
So we just used to just give her an injection, and we're doing the same with Monty now. So yeah,
You're never tempted to go. She enjoys it. I wonder what this is like.
Get on the roids, Rowie.
Give it a shot.
I'm silly enough without it. Is okay. Look, is everyone happy to continue on with this or what?
It's hard
probably
when we
have
ferociously agree.
I mean, we actually started out by talking about something probably completely different than what we're talking about now. But let's ask if anyone wants to be involved. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The last comments were with Fenton. Tam, if you've got anything else, some of the guys from last week, including the guy from the Isle of Wight, and there was a guy, Red Rob or something, who was from somewhere. He's eating chips. I can't believe it.
Canada.
Yes. Yeah, he was from Canada. So look, if anyone wants to jump on and just chuck in a few comments before we wrap it up in about 10 or 15 minutes, that'd be great. On YouTube Live, the wonderful podcast, the incredibly popular worldwide podcast of an atheist, a believer, and a pastor walk into a bar.
Award-winning.
Join us, please. Comments. Finishing comments, guys, on the whole free will thing. None of us obviously are fatalists by any stretch of the imagination.
From us, from the panel? Comments?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
go all the comments, because there's always a bit of a delay between what we see and the comments coming in. I think there's about a 15, 20-second delay in the stream. So
Yeah. So
let's hear it, Luke.
Oh, look, my final thoughts on it. I think to hold an extreme position on either end of those, either fatalism or complete free will, is dangerous, as I sort of illustrated earlier, because I think it can lead to complacency and a hesitation in a lot of cases to step in and act as change agents in the world. So I think we need to understand that, yes, whilst we're free, we're also never truly free in the sense of that we are shaped by our environments and systems and communities and histories, and yet we are not bound to them in the sense that hope is there, change is possible. And I think we need to hold those two things in tension, whatever our theology, or lack of theology, because otherwise, how do we develop the imagination that another world is possible, that another pathway forward is possible? And it doesn't have to be changing the world. That can be overwhelming, but it can be changing someone's situation, or at least having the empathy to allow them the grace that they might not be acting in a way that you fully understand, and we may not ever fully understand that because we haven't been in their situation, and so allowing that space to kind of to see the humanity in them, to see their history and to see their situation, rather than just villainize them or make them a caricature of some sort of politics that we may have, or predisposed thought that we may have. In a nutshell, whatever we believe around it all, we have to believe that hope is necessary and change is possible. And it's in that we can enact that, we can step into those situations. That's what matters in the end is the action, in my view.
So is there nothing in you guys' belief for free will? There's no such thing on any level that free will exists as believers. Does it? You can't.
I think it does, but we need to define what free will is. Free will. That I think that the free will. There's absolute. I believe absolutely in a free will, in that we can make decisions, in that our paths aren't some linear preset path. I think they're.
So where's the confusion? So as a Christian man, as a biblical studier, if you like, why is there nothing in the Bible that states clearly that you can replicate now? Free will gives you as a believer. You said you have to interpret what that means. Why does this have to be interpreted? Why is it so difficult?
Because everything has to be interpreted.
Why?
Language is inherently deconstructible. That's Derrida. There's all that. Every word only means what the meaning that we give it and the meaning that we understand it. And these things change over time. So words like free will, it's going to mean something different to a whole bunch of different people. And that's
so you're suggesting that the Bible was written with the anticipation that every generation following that would have to try and interpret what it actually means.
Of course. I mean, it was written in. Think about this. Something starts as a story in a different language. Eventually, it's written down in a different language again. It's then translated to another language and then translated to another language. Of course, that has to be interpreted. But either way, even if it was written straight down from me and I give something to you, but I've written it down, there is still a process of interpretation that you have to go through. And there's still things that
challenged by Christians who believe it's the literal word of God.
Exactly. That falls apart very quickly because it cannot be. It's ridiculous, actually, when you think about it. That's why there's got to be a better way to understand and view these texts. And we need to understand that there is a process of interpretation. There is a meaning that's attributed. It's nothing's as straightforward as that. And that's without even going into the point of the fact that the whole thing, there is argument within it. There are competing threads of thought. So not only is there just not one thing that has to be interpreted correctly, there are multiple competing visions of God within this.
Luke, with all due respect, my dear friend, how can you honestly expect people to believe that? Yes, it's going to be confusing. Yes, it's long. Yes, it's dated. Yes, everyone's going to have to try and work it out. I mean, seriously, if God is so amazing, how could he possibly have written or not written? But
yeah, he didn't.
All I can take from that is that God had nothing to do with the writing of the Bible. It was a bunch of completely ignorant Iron Age men who wrote something that wasn't. It was for the time, and in 2024. We have to be geniuses to try and work out what it was that the frig they were talking about. Something is free will.
You haven't read the Good News Bible, Pete.
Yeah, I have.
You just got to get the right translation, Rowie.
Yeah, I like King James, mate. I mean, it was. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
okay, King James.
It just what amazes me is that people are willing to bend things that are just so far-fetched and hard to try and legitimize, and saying, well, of course no one understands it. Well, why would there be? What's the point of the Bible if people just simply can't understand it, except for a select few who then don't have the ability to necessarily share that with all of the tens of millions of lay people who need to try and somehow understand the Bible but can't do unless they have a teacher in front of them, because it's just all so confusing and it doesn't make sense. And of course, it's up to interpretation. That's not
pretty
the
solid argument.
workings. That's not the workings of a smart, caring God who wants people to understand what it is that he's trying to say.
What
I
should
don't
God do?
see-
Just give us a spot book. Spot meets
Yeah,
God.
give me the cliff
No,
notes.
it,
God is-
no.
black and
It
white.
proves that there is. It proves that there is no God. That it was written by a bunch of Iron Age men, for men, misogynistic men who disallowed women to speak and have a comment because they weren't educated. And then they put it all together. They didn't give a shit about what was going to be happening in 2024 with a bunch of guys
Agreed.
sitting around going, "This is mental. You can't make this fit." So
I-
to me,
I-
it's time
I-
to throw it all out, chuck it all out, and start again.
Yeah, so that's where
Forget
we
the
differ.
Bible. Just believe in God.
I think, yeah, it's way too late for me to start this, but I do want this to be a topic of another night because I think it's important because we've touched on it a few times, but there's so much that you and I agree on just there. And yet you land in a place that goes, the whole thing is ridiculous. And it therefore means that God had nothing to do with it. And I land in a different place, but yet we actually are identifying the very same things written by humans, misogynistic, conflicting points of view, difficult
Irrelevant.
to understand, parts of it possibly. So I think that's an interesting conversation to have. Where do I see that and go, how are we identifying the same thing? If we were both arguing and I'm saying, no, it's the opposite of that. It is the literal word of God, but it's interesting that we're landing in the same place with a lot of this stuff. And yet our, how we view the value of this library of ancient texts is so vastly different. But again, it's 10:30, so I don't want to start now, but
No.
I think it's going to be good. There's a chat for another night. I think it's healthy.
Rich, do you concur
About?
with everything we just said that Luke and I were talking about?
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's interesting because, it's similar background to me, I guess you have, is, we were taught that you believe in God because you read it in the Bible. And if the Bible's wrong, then everything else falls apart. Whereas, my first encounter with a belief in God wasn't in a book. It was actually with a group of people. It was a community. And because that community valued this book, that's sort of how the Bible came to me. I never read it and went, oh, I believe the Bible, now I believe in God. It was actually the other way around. Yet the thing that actually sustains me is not the community, because they have let me down big time, as I've probably let them down. The Bible, as I was taught it to read, is completely not there. I guess one of the things that holds me in that is a personal experience of things. And so that leads me to one thing I'll say about this is, in this whole space, like I can only believe what I'm convinced about, and therefore only ask that of others. Like I can't ask Jace to believe in God based on what I've experienced. I can only say, Jace, you've got to believe what you've experienced, what you've seen in as far as evidence and experience as a person.
But why? What tangible difference would it make to me?
No, you've got to believe what the only thing you can believe is what you have at in your life, in your experience. I can't tell you my experience and say, therefore you've got to believe. You can only believe what you're own convinced of with all the stuff going on.
But if you guys don't you don't believe in judgment or any of that sort of stuff, what tangible difference would it make in my life if I did become a believer? What changes? What my end goals don't change, my behavior doesn't change, how I react to other people.
I see what you're saying. It's interesting because maybe I'll answer it in a bit of a weird way. So I guess one of the stories that we were told is I become a Christian and I become saved or a part of the group because in my thing was I said a prayer, and accepted Jesus, my Lord and Savior, into my heart.
That's what I did.
And somehow something sort of ontological in my very being changed at that moment. Whereas nowadays I'm convinced that being a Christian is not about saying a prayer and getting in. It's actually about being part of a community that is chasing down becoming more like Jesus as we understand it. So I wouldn't be really like changing your beliefs about a set of codes and stuff is not going to be that useful to you unless you want to become a part of a community that's like that. Then you sort of, that's why you're not a member of a sports club, because you're not into that. So it's like, well, you're still going to be healthy and stuff like that. But if you want to become a Christian, you've got to sort of become a part of a community, and then all of that other stuff flows from it. So yeah, I don't know. And my personal theology is, I think we've discussed, and we won't get into it, but if you're chasing down love and goodness and truth, that is my definition of God. I happen to put the big G-O-D word to it. You don't.
But where do you find that?
Yeah.
Where do you find that, Rich?
Where do I find that?
Where do you find that essence of God? Because we all go through the same entry level praying, Jesus, I accept, I'm a sinner and blah, 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 blah. But then when we get into that, where do we find that thing that you mentioned, that love and acceptance and community and stuff? Because you're not automatically going to find it. You can go very wrong. You can go off in all sorts of different directions.
I've had...
It's a hard question. I get it.
I've had bad experiences with church.
Yeah.
Bad experiences with churches along the way. However, I've got a group now, and Luke and I are part of that community group.
It's not a cult.
It's not a cult. I think that's the actual name of the church.
Don't believe your friends and family. It's not a cult.
How is Satan, by the way? Is he all right?
He's doing well, I guess.
He barely rocks up.
But the idea is, I think the way that works is we have a relationship not because we agree. In fact, we've got people who are pro-Trump and in our group along with us. So there's because agreement is not the goal. It's
But that's fundamental values, Rich.
Yeah, no, but this is what it is. That's where we are right now. What defines the sort of membership of the group is not like a boundary that you cross, but it's a movement toward a center. And that movement towards the center is, I've got things wrong. I don't understand everything. At the moment, I disagree with other people in this group, but we've got this prime value that we're moving towards something, as Christians, our movement is towards becoming like Jesus as we understand him.
Do you think this has never been done before?
Difference in this group than as other groups, I guess.
Do you think this has never been done before? Are you doing it because you think it's something unique, or quite the contrary, that it's something that you've seen works before?
I haven't seen it work quite like this. And mostly what it is there's a whole lot of friends in the very periphery that aren't interested in that kind of thing because they're happy enough with the way they are with their faith to be right out there. They're not interested in a whole bunch of sort of organized church. But there's a group of us who are like, we don't want to be a part of this sort of boundary keeping, biblicist, fundamentalist nonsense, but we don't want to give up on Jesus. And so if we don't want to give up on Jesus, well, let's do something together. And that's a sort of this centered set, this movement towards Jesus is how we know we're together, not because we agree on everything.
Are you guys part of the same fellowship or church?
Sorry?
Are you two part of the same fellowship or church?
Yeah, I label it as a church. Some of them don't, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. It just doesn't look like one.
Yeah.
We don't have a
How
name.
many people would there approximately be within your gathering?
About 50 odd.
30
Okay.
plus kids goes up to 50. If like everybody rocked up at the same time, yeah, it'd be about 50.
And do you have a physical church you go to, or do you have a name for the group, or?
No.
No name, no location. We meet in homes, we meet in parks.
We
Like for
didn't want to fall into the trap of branding. So
Right.
we said no name, no, which makes
Not
it
yet.
awkward. It actually annoys
Yeah.
me, but yeah, and it's
No,
exactly.
It
Yeah,
makes
maybe,
things hard. But what it is it keeps the organic side of things better than the organized part. But like for instance, one of the things we did on Sunday is all the parts that the different families went to the shops, bought a whole bunch of stuff for hampers. We got together for church, the service. Luke shared some thoughts around what it means to recognize inequality and suffering in the world and do something about it. And then the kids, we helped them build hampers for kids. We did hampers for the adults, and it was for basically women and children are going to be in shelters, women's shelters,
Love that
fleeing
sense of-
domestic violence. So that's what the life of ours looked like. In the midst of that, we might be sharing about Jesus and about stuff like that, but the value is not teachings. The value is moving towards a place where we actually act like Jesus would, rather than believe a whole bunch of propositional truths that align with a religion called Christianity. And hopefully that's
As an atheist, why can't you do that without the Bible?
I think you still
You can.
can.
You can.
Yeah.
And
Can
so
I-
the difference
sorry, guys,
difference
just before-
is there's a whole
before we
lot of
move
value
on.
that comes for us doing it as in the framework of Christianity.
I just want to just quickly revert back to Fenton, God love him, with a couple of comments that he's made. The peasants not understanding was very useful as a social tool,
Yeah.
even for good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
literacy.
And his final comment, maybe final, if they fear the mysterious, they may act more moral in the Middle Ages. Yeah.
Yes, definitely used as a tool.
Always appreciate.
These days we refer to that as security cameras.
Yeah, that's right.
Where you're coming
tool
from,
of empire.
Fenton. Look, this we can continue discussing this as people, whether guys are tuned in on the podcast or whatever is irrelevant. I think this is a great subject because Lou and I did something very similar to this. Nothing's new in religion. Every idea that you come up with and do, you can guarantee someone has done it before.
Yeah. I reckon.
There's nothing necessarily new and original, which doesn't make it bad. It just saddens me to think that we have to try and come up with something different on a small micro level to fit in with what other people are doing. And we had a church run from home. People would go out and buy food and bring it around, and we'd have all that. It was beautiful. It was lovely. It was wonderful. It was great. It was just really nice. And I'm not trying to in any way, shape, or form poo-poo what it is that you're doing, other than to offer what I've been through or what we've been through on a similar thing, and it strikes me as just being, and we were doing this back in the 90s, trying to get away from all of the bullshit and just try and people would come around to our home. I'd get the guitar out, we'd sing songs for Jesus, and we'd pray and we'd eat, and it was all that. It was without all of the bullshit that goes with the church and all of the preconceived ideas about what you should be doing in an organization and stuff. And I don't. It's what is that weird noise?
It's coming from below his microphone.
It's the dog snoring.
Whose dog?
Mine.
Oh. I thought it was Jason farting on cue.
No. I was just going to say, we're supposed to believe that, Rich.
Oh, look. Hello, baby. Who's this?
This one's Pepper.
Pepper. Where's Salt?
What's the dog's name?
Pepper.
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 Yeah.
Salt and pepper.
Pepper.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, doesn't
Um,
like me.
Well, dogs are good judges of character. Oh, dang. Knife to the heart. I reckon we could really get somewhere on investigating this.
Yeah,
Maybe not
I
in
reckon
the
there's another
podcast,
session
but
there.
I don't know. My number one question that I wrote down at the beginning of all of this is, what purpose do you serve? Just simply that question. What purpose do you serve? You must have one. If it's not self-fulfilling, then it must be something broader for the community to be able to contribute something that they don't currently have. Jace, if you feel any time to put on your whatever it is you're wearing and disappear, go to bed or whatever, that's fine. This is probably not very interesting for you, but
I execute justice.
okay.
Seriously, though,
But please
if we
stick
all
around.
think about what our ultimate objective is: spread love, spread peace, encourage cooperation and community. All of those things are perfectly valid. But I also think it's about time that the rest of us stop being so passive about people who are being evil and stood up and started telling people. Australians have this thing where we shy away from confrontation.
Of
But I've
course.
seen enough people over the last few months who are getting away with murder because we're all too scared to confront them. And I think
Yep.
it would be very Christian of us, very community-minded of us, if we all stopped shying away from confrontation and called people out when they started misbehaving. So that's my mission for the indefinite future.
Okay.
Watch
That
me get a
works.
black eye.
I totally get it. The reality is, and I know both these gentlemen will both agree in principle, but may be guarded with their answer, and that is that you do not, in fact, need the Bible, religion, or God in order to be a good person. There's no benefit in being a good person, waving a Christian flag, having a Bible in your hand, or going to church, to being a good person. It makes no difference. Good persons and good persons are exactly the same. And this is the problem with religion. It's not unique in any way, shape, or form to being loving and to being kind. You don't need religion to be a kind person. You just need to just be a kind person, lose all the stuff that you think that you needed to have in order to be a kind person. You need to know nothing about the Bible because it's already in your heart. You know what it takes to be a good person. You don't need to have references to the Bible. You don't need scripture. You don't need to go to church. You don't need any of that. You just need to be what humanity needs as good people, not religion. Simple. You're doing it, Jace. I'm talking about it. These two guys live it, but they like to have some sense of meaning connected to it, whether it's intellectual.
Though that both of them, and we talked about this a good few months ago, that even without the Bible and without Christianity, they're both genuinely nice guys anyway. So
Absolutely.
the fact that they do have this belief structure and this faith, that no issue, no skin off my nose, if that gives them fulfillment and gives them direction and so on, that's fantastic.
Yep.
But they don't need it. It's obvious they're just genuinely good people anyway. So I don't have any issue with it. Just like I don't respect you any less for the fact that you follow sport, Pete. I still think you're a lovely guy.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. What Rich and Luke will hopefully one day, and it doesn't matter to me because it's about freedom. It's about freedom to express who you are and what you are without the bits that go with it that somehow tell people that in order to serve people or to be nice or whatever, you need to have a relationship with God and believe in Jesus. That's the issue. It's if you just threw them away and then helped and loved people, what would you miss out on? What would it be that you have in your life now that you wouldn't have if you just loved people? You know what I mean? It's like a crutch that somehow the intellect says I can't actually serve people and be a beautiful human being unless I believe in Jesus. And the two are mutually exclusive as far as I'm concerned. You don't need that. And this will be an ongoing discussion and a debate for a long time to one of us says, okay, or we don't, and we continue on. But
I like the
and
community.
I'm all about finding better ways of doing everything I ever do. I try and find a better way to do it. I've been doing this thing on that doesn't work. I'm going to find another way. I'm just about making this slimline and streamlined and easy for all of us. I'm not about bringing people down from what they believe in. What the hell's what do I gain out of doing that? I just want to make it simple so we can all get on the same page eventually.
So, guys,
Do you know
within
what I
your
mean?
fellowship,
Unless you can offer up something that you've got that I don't have, which is beneficial.
is it
I'm open.
within your fellowship, is it Jesus and the belief in God and the Bible and the scriptures and so on that is the glue that holds your community together, that coerces people to turn up regularly and to be an active part and an interested party to what's going on?
Some parts of it, some parts of the community, but but not really. Funnily enough, I mean, it is not covertly Jesus. It's not secretly a church thing. We're very open about this is the thing, but also there are people involved in it that don't like to come to the anything where we'll say, okay, we're going to do this event and it's more churchy, but
Right.
they'll come to picnics, barbecues, camping, different things, and they know they're just as much a member of the community as someone who came to everything. There's no hierarchy. There's no distinction.
There's no hierarchy, right? Okay.
No, they feel equally as welcome in whichever aspect. And so, in a weird way, and they're just as much a part of the community. So, but they're not. So it can't be just the God stuff. And then even in the Jesus-y stuff, again, like Rich said, there's a diversity of beliefs in that space as well, from conservative.
So you would welcome someone that didn't have spiritual beliefs?
100% in a heartbeat. Yeah,
Right.
without a doubt. Yeah, and there are people that are wrestling that are like, I don't know if I believe anymore. Who
Right.
cares? It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That's what Pete identified as one of the main things that he missed, that kind of held him back from leaving the church for the longest time, was knowing that you would then be outside of the community that you've been with so very long.
That's right. Well, there's very much a space now where people who are wrestling with church stuff or with God, and they don't know whether they believe or what they believe or any of that sort of stuff, and they find themselves in no man's land. And so part of the genesis or the idea when this kind of organically came about was, what if there was a space for that? There was for people, and that's why it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you go to church. There are some people that still go to a more traditional type church,
Right.
and yet they'll still come and do stuff with us as well. And we're like, that's cool. We're not gangs. You can do what God
There's
does.
no criticism of them. There's no ostracization
Zero.
or
No.
you can't come to this meeting because you're not a believer kind of thing.
Oh, definitely not. No.
Okay.
Everything's open. It's all open for everyone. Everyone has a voice. We tried to identify all the things that weren't done healthily in certain organizations, and then said, how do we look at doing them better?
I hesitate to call it preach because that has emotional baggage attached to it. But when you proselytize, whatever you want to call it,
Yep.
Are you doing it more around the teachings and the lessons, or more around learning about the Bible and the scripture and the story? Like, which is more important, or do you do both separately?
Well, it's always the lessons when you're preaching. It's got to be about. There's got to be some sort of practical element, like Rich said on the weekend. It was just mostly for the kids and for the adults, but it was like, how do we? Okay, so we're doing this thing. So how do we visualize the wealth inequality, not
Yep.
just in the world, but in and
This
how
is
do
what I love
we
about
know-
what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like teaching the kids and also the adults. It's like, hey, we are this 1%. Like we are
Yeah.
the rich man. We are,
Yeah.
and it's easy to not see the rest,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we need to turn and we need to see and we need to participate in that, because this isn't fixed. This isn't like something that is just the way the world is. This isn't the way the world should be. It should be spread. It should be even. No one should have too much, but everyone should have enough. And so it's like, that's the message, the lesson. And then and I'll use different things in the Bible to illustrate that, but it's to support that lesson and that message. It's not about digging deep into what this particular scripture means, and I'll do that in other avenues and that, because I find that interesting. But you can get lost in the weeds with that as well, and so it
I
just
love that,
becomes about.
because I remember being forced to go to Sunday school as a kid, and I loathed it because all it was a reading out of the scriptures. And, it just, for a kid, that just turned me off completely. But what you're talking about, where you're talking about wealth inequality and describing that in terms that they will understand within the entire group, that's learning that is above and beyond Christianity. And that's the sort of learning that you don't get in school or at university, right? That is where would you pick up that knowledge if you didn't get it from an empathetic person that was sharing that kind of knowledge? Where else in our community today do we get that?
Yeah.
Guys,
it should be everywhere.
Can I just jump in with a couple of comments from Fenton? 1055 is 2028. The peasants not understanding was very useful as a social tool, even for good. Might have already read that out before. If they fear the mysterious, they may act more moral in the Middle Ages. In fact, might have read both those out before already.
Yeah.
I did. Okay, cool. Fenton, if you have left us or planning on leaving us, thank you so much for your participation tonight, gentlemen. I'm happy to continue on.
I got to shoot though, Rowie. I got to go give my dog the meds and yes, do that.
And I have a Rogan Josh waiting for me.
Oh,
what?
Sounds nice.
Rogan Josh.
Oh,
Sans coriander.
How is old Rogan?
But we don't use that word in my house.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
It's not a curry without coriander. Load it up.
Mate,
Sprinkle that bad boy all over it.
Your world experience is this big, my friend.
I've got some in the crisper right now. If you want me to drop it off, mate, fresh coriander.
What, coriander?
Bring that shit on.
I ever told you the best way to prepare coriander?
Yeah, throw it in the bin.
Well, no, not quite. I mean, you get the coriander, you blanch it first, right?
Yeah.
And then once you've got it, you take it to the cutting board. You get your best knife, your sharpest knife, and you actually you go through the stems, and you have that technique where you use your knuckles, right, really up close. When you get to the actual leafy part of the coriander itself, rather than cutting it in the same direction like that, what you do is you take the cutting board and you scrape it all off into the bin.
Yeah. You're very predictable sometimes.
He looks well pleased, doesn't he?
If you know what I do, if I haven't got any coriander but I need it for a curry, I just go and get some soap and put that in the dish, because apparently that's what it tastes like to some people.
You could just go and headbutt a wall for a while.
Mate, it's actually a fact that those people who don't like coriander are definitely intellectually
No. The
challenged.
truth is, those who don't like coriander actually have a mutated gene.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
We're the ones that are evolving.
Well, you're missing out. You can't have a curry without coriander. I mean,
Yeah, I'm happy to be
Mexican food, Spanish food, coriander. Hello.
Indian.
You know,
food.
the thing is, this is seriously though, this is a pet hate of mine. If I turn up to a restaurant and they haven't identified this coriander in something and they bring it out and it's got coriander in it, it goes
Yep.
back to the kitchen because there's enough of us now that this is a genuine problem. You've got to
Yeah.
identify it. It's
See, that's
like
why
people
we
with allergies.
sent, that's why we
Systemic.
sent you off to a place in WA that doesn't have coriander.
We
all
don't.
restaurants.
Well, you know what? I'm near Albany, right? What do you think would be the number one sort of restaurant that you would have in Albany? Yeah,
Chinese.
Seafood.
How many seafood restaurants are there in Albany?
One.
Whoa.
Are you serious?
Not
Zero.
One. Zero.
Jeez,
Where am I
that's
supposed to get my clam chowder?
Well, mate, you need to start a
an
restaurant.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So
Launch.
for those that don't know, Rich is a lone man at the moment. He, apart from his dog, his girls are in America at the moment, in
Aw.
Disneyland or Disney World.
Oh,
Yeah.
they went
Having
without
gone
you.
through a pretty horrible couple of weeks.
Oh,
Yeah, but that's what Rich is doing. Luke is looking after a puppy dog that is not doing very well, but we wish her all the best. What else?
but you also got to tell everybody that Luke has the second prettiest wife in the world.
Who's the first? You're such a suck. Seriously, no one is. No one is. I've not seen your wife at all, but I've seen Luke's, and he's punching like fucking wow.
Oh, tell me about it. Yep.
He's Mike Tyson right there.
I saw that picture on Facebook and I just went, no way. That's why I need to be a Christian.
Yeah,
The Lord blesses.
Yep.
I get your hand off it, Daryl.
It's about as close as you'll get to a miracle, though, that you'll see. I tell you what.
It really is. I mean, mate, you're
Defies
showing
belief.
something that I
But it's
can't see.
It's a beautiful family, Luke. You've done well.
Thank you,
I
mate.
haven't seen
Yeah.
any photos of Rich, so I can't comment. Although I have to admit, I have met Lou before, although she might not remember. And she's gorgeous as well. Well done, Pete.
You met Lou
I have.
at 6PR.
I suspect it was 6PR. I recall that she was in her capacity as an RSPCA person.
Oh, well, that would have been reasonably recent, like in the last 5 years or something.
It could have been when I was at Curtin Radio. Don't recall.
Oh, okay.
I've interviewed a lot of people over the years.
Yeah. Well,
It may have been
Yeah.
a phone call thing because I know there was a time when I was doing Jenny Seaton's show and we used to regularly get calls about animals that they were putting up for
yeah, it
adoption
might have
and
been.
Yeah.
But remember, I interviewed you several times down at the Wave at Mandra on my show.
Uh-huh.
Remember that? That was
Radio
that would have
announcers
been,
interviewing radio announcers. It's just weird.
that would have been the highlight of your career, talking to
That
me
was-
on
that
the
was-
radio.
Pinnacle. It's been all downhill ever since, Pete.
Gentlemen,
Oh.
Thanks to Fenton, thanks to Tam. Great comments tonight. Thank you for being a part of it. We're going to come up with a new subject for next week. I want to talk about yours, Jace, about the whole evil thing. Because I think if you want to talk about real evil, I think it's important to have Rich and Luke involved in this because when you talk about evil,
It's not just evil, is it? It's evil.
these guys wrote the book on evil.
Yeah.
Like, ooh-wee.
$1 million.
Oh,
Thank you, guys. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I don't know what's happening with Suresh, but we wish him all the very best for his constant recovery with his little thingy bob in the heart. What's it called? The
Oh, he's got like a
Little pacemaker.
defibrillator put in.
Yes, he's doing really well, and we love him to bits. So,
Yeah.
Suresh, if you're listening, which I'm sure if you've got any brains, you won't be. Look forward to catching up with you next Wednesday. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Jace. Passing
All right.
ending comments, guys, on anything.
Be nice.
Yep,
Solid.
Sounds
I
good to me.
concur.
that works. Okay.
All right.
See you all.
You Christians are going to hell. That's all I'm
Yeah.
interested in saying.
You got to love one another right now.
Thanks, Rowie. All right. Well, we'll see you all next week then.
Yeah,
right.
thanks,
Definitely.
guys.
Okay.
Good night. See you next Wednesday, which will be Wednesday. I'll be in December, which will be December the 6th. Next Wednesday, for an atheist, a believer, and a pastor walk into a bar. Great to have your company. Thank you so much, everyone tonight who contributed. Cheers, guys. Love you
All right,
all.
see ya.
See you
See you,
guys.
legends.
Bye.